In the near future, the world was forever changed when a colossal dungeon erupted in the middle of Tokyo. Inside this impossible structure lay a vast world teeming with grotesque and powerful monsters. But it also held countless treasures and resources completely unknown to mankind. And so, people began to challenge the dungeon, all dreaming of striking it rich. The rule was simple. The deeper you go, the greater the danger and the greater the reward. Exploring this deadly place became a constant dance with death for those brave enough to enter. And for one party facing a monstrous beast, it seemed their luck had finally run out. But just as they accepted their fate, a blinding flash of purple lightning tore through the darkness. Strange materials materialized from thin air, much to the confusion of a surviving adventurer. Then, from the shadows emerged a mysterious young man, wielding a massive lightning cannon he seemingly just created. The monster's corpse smolders after a single, devastating attack, a move that clearly cost an immense amount of power. As the mysterious cannoneer leaps away, the surviving adventurers desperately call out, begging him to save the rest of their party. But their supposed hero turns back with a chillingly indifferent expression, asking why he would ever bother to do that. The hopeful adventurer is left completely stunned, his relief instantly turning to utter disbelief. The young man coldly explains he's only here for the boss materials to craft a gift, and he won't lift a finger for a job that doesn't pay. At that moment, more monsters appear on the cliffs above, their glowing eyes locking onto the now defenseless party. They fall to their knees begging for their lives, but their savior stands firm, flatly refusing to help them. He begins to turn away, his cold silence, a death sentence for the doomed adventurers. However, something makes him pause. In a sudden blur of motion, he whips back around with incredible speed, startling the terrified knight. His weapon hums with latent energy as he finally offers them a single sliver of hope, stating that if they're looking to make a deal, he's willing to listen. He holds up his incredible weapon, not offering to save them, but demanding to know how much they'll pay for it. The story flashes back a few months, revealing a younger Suma who cared nothing for adventuring, only his craft. This all began when Japan's most popular MMORPG, Fantasia Online, somehow became a real-world labyrinth. The game's players were granted an overwhelming advantage, manifesting their characters' abilities in reality. With normal weapons rendered useless, these players flooded the dungeon, becoming its first explorers and treasure hunters. But for Suma, his path began with a mysterious glowing cube that appeared in his hand. He is Soma Saotome, and he chose the one class everyone knew was worthless, the crafter. While others chased glory, he obsessively focused on production, a job universally mocked as the ultimate trash tier. Yet, the world's scorn meant nothing to him as he poured every ounce of his being into his unique item. Because mastering his craft above all else was Suma Saotome's one and only playstyle. Suma finishes his latest creation, the smug nod, perfectly satisfied with his work. But his quiet moment is shattered when a desperate communication call finally connects to someone named Shika. His confidence vanishes as her panicked voice rings out, begging him for help. He knows something is terribly wrong, because his strong, capable sister has never once cried out like this before. The horrifying possibilities of what could have happened in the dungeon race through his mind. With no time to waste, he sprints through the dark corridors, shouting her name in desperation. His voice echoes through the empty halls, but only silence answers his frantic calls. Suddenly, a weak voice whispers his name, and he whips around to find its source. But standing before him isn't his sister, but a terrified fairy-like creature who thinks she's turned into a monster. In that instant, Suma's entire world shatters as he stares in blank horror at the impossible truth. The rest of the party finally arrives, screaming in disbelief at the impossible scene before them. While his sister panics about becoming a monster, his mind races, knowing that players simply don't transform like this. He gently holds the tiny, terrified fairy in his palm as she looks up with desperate eyes. With no other choice, he activates his unique crafter skill, Analysis, hoping to find a clue to her condition. His power is meant for crafting, but he gambles that it can treat her horrifying transformation as a simple status effect. At first, the scan completely fails, resulting in nothing but a blast of corrupted data and static noise. But just as hope begins to fade, he manages to decipher a single, critical line through the digital interference. The analysis reveals her condition is an unnamed monsterification, and the only cure is the legendary Philosopher's Stone. Her hope is instantly reignited, recalling the stone is a god-tier item capable of miraculous healing. But he immediately tempers her excitement with a grim reality. The stone has never been found, though its crafting recipe might still exist. The fairy panics as the recipe reveals a list of god-tier materials that are nearly impossible to gather. Realizing they have no choice but to buy them, he begins the grim task of calculating the total cost The final tally is a soul-crushing 100 million gold, an amount that leaves her completely stunned. He begins to despair, feeling utterly pathetic that the recipe is useless without the funds to acquire the components. But she suddenly snaps him out of it, reminding him his unique class is the only reason they even have this sliver of hope. Her fierce loyalty catches him completely by surprise, shaking him from his self-pity. With a newfound resolve, he quietly thanks her for pulling him back from the edge. He then leaps to his feet, declaring they will risk everything to buy the materials for the Philosopher's Stone. Turning to her with a determined grin, he makes it clear that she will be helping him every step of the way. Her face lights up as she happily agrees, ready to take on the impossible quest by his side. Sheikah anxiously asks how they'll ever get the money, but he already has a plan, declaring they'll dive right into the labyrinth's mining area to fund their quest. Surrounded by rookies, he observes the competition while his unique crafting tool begins to glow. Sheikah watches in amazement as he instantly materializes an item from thin air. He reveals a small mining bomb to gather ore, but his plan is immediately met with mockery from a nearby party. The insults continue as they call his crafter class a trash job for someone with 0 sense. A smug wizard and his goons openly laugh at the total beginner who chose such a useless path. But the crafter remains silent, his cold, unimpressed gaze cutting right through them. The wizard's party suddenly recoils in shock, realizing they're looking at a class so rare it was thought to be extinct. He completely ignores their taunts, turning to leave, only to be stopped by the arrogant party leader. Suddenly, Sheikah has had enough, furiously calling out the party for their endless insults. But the arrogant group simply scoffs, dismissing her as nothing more than a pet monster. Enraged by the annoyance, the wizard violently swats at the tiny fairy to shut her up, but his attack is suddenly caught mid-swing by an unseen force. It's the crafter, whose grip is so powerful the wizard can't comprehend how a class with low strength could stop him cold. With a terrifying glare, he warns them that while he can be mocked, laying a hand on his companion crosses a fatal line. He then turns his back, coldly dismissing the group and telling them to get lost before they get hurt. Absolutely humiliated, the wizard begins to channel immense magical energy, refusing to be disrespected by a mere crafter. He screams that the boy will pay with his life and unleashes a powerful spell directly at his back. A massive magical explosion erupts, aimed to obliterate the crafter where he stands. The arrogant wizard cackles, believing his overwhelming magic has completely erased the garbage crafter from existence. But when the smoke clears, the crafter stands completely untouched, protected by a swirling vortex of water that nullified the attack. The wizard can only stare in disbelief, his mind unable to process how his ultimate spell was just gone. The crafter then reveals he simply combined two of the most basic items imaginable, a common mining bomb and a simple bottle of drinking water. Using his unique crafting ability, he fused them on the spot to create a powerful anti-fire water bomb. He smirks, remarking how easily a last-second creation could counter such a high-level spell, while his tiny companion peeks out in awe. This casual dismissal sends the wizard into a fit of pure, teeth-grinding rage. He screams that it's a lie, refusing to accept that a common item could ever block his advanced magic. Determined to expose him as a fraud, the wizard activates his own analysis skill to reveal the crafter's true stats. But the system completely malfunctions, returning only a massive error as it fails to comprehend the impossible existence standing before it. The wizard stammers that it's impossible, as his analysis skill shatters before his very eyes. But the scan wasn't a total failure, revealing a single, terrifying piece of information. Level 999. The crafter simply smirks, casually confirming he's nothing more than what he appears to be. This revelation sends the wizard into a spiral of pure shock, unable to comprehend a level that breaks the very laws of their world. Our hero then explains that just like magic, a crafter's items scale with their level, revealing the true power behind his simple creation. Nearby, the other adventurers begin to tremble, realizing their elite mage might actually lose to a so-called useless class. Clenching his fists in utter humiliation, the wizard refuses to accept such a disgraceful defeat. He channels every last ounce of his power, unleashing a massive golden magic circle that floods the entire cavern with light. With a final, desperate scream, he unleashes Earthbreak, a cataclysmic spell that rips the very ground apart to annihilate his foe. Yet when the dust settles, the crafter stands completely untouched, looking down on the exhausted mage as if he were nothing. Driven mad by his defeat, the wizard begins to laugh maniacally, boasting that he has mastered all forms of elemental magic. In his desperation, he summons a terrifying sphere of darkness with glowing eyes, demanding the crafter beg for mercy. He arrogantly offers one final chance for our hero to kneel, believing he has seized control of an ultimate power. But the forbidden spell goes horribly wrong, unleashing a colossal demonic dragon that he has no hope of containing. The beast immediately charges a ball of pure destruction in its maw, preparing to annihilate everything in sight. It then unleashes a cataclysmic torrent of fire, not at the crafter, but directly at its own foolish summoner. The arrogant mage can only scream in absolute terror as the inferno he created rushes to consume him. He is instantly engulfed in the blast, his body thrown back by the sheer force of his own catastrophic mistake. Yet just as the flames are about to swallow everyone, the crafter leaps into action, deploying a massive energy shield to block the attack. He lands with a look of pure annoyance as his panicked companion realizes this simple fight has just escalated into a world-ending disaster. As the monstrous dragon roars, the crafter calmly asks his terrified fairy companion to use her scout skill, but she panics, believing they have no way to fight such a beast. He reassures her that all she needs to do is find its weak point, and as the dragon charges a cataclysmic blast, she steels her resolve to help. The fairy bravely flies straight into the torrent of destructive energy, her own power flaring to life. She activates her skill, overlaying a diagnostic grid on the colossal monster to pinpoint the single hidden flaw in its defenses. In a flash of insight, she locates the critical weakness glowing brightly at the base of the dragon's tail. With the target confirmed, our hero instantly crafts a powerful explosive device in his hand. He hurls the bomb with perfect accuracy, causing a massive explosion right on the dragon's head. But the beast merely staggers, as the horrified adventurers realize the attack did almost nothing against its monstrous power. The crafter smirks, clenching his fist as he reveals his true goal wasn't to kill it, but to trigger a drop item by landing a critical hit. With his plan in motion, he activates his crafting cube, preparing to combine his resources into a truly devastating weapon. With a crazed grin, he unleashes triple craft, forging a weapon on a completely different scale. In an instant, the legendary draconic pile bunker materializes in his hands, a weapon built to kill a god. He then charges forward, a single man against a colossal beast, dwarfed by its power but unwavering in his assault. With impossible strength, he slams the weapon's tip deep into the dragon's impenetrable hide. A cold light glows from his hand as he declares the fight over, preparing to unleash its true, devastating power. A single massive shell casing clatters to the ground, signaling that the final, earth-shattering blow has been delivered. Suddenly, a torrent of energy erupts from within the beast, tearing it apart in a completely one-sided execution. As the monster disintegrates, a legendary sword falls from the heavens, an epic reward for an impossible victory. The onlookers erupt in cheers, their terror turning to pure awe at the man they once dismissed as a useless crafter. But the wizard who summoned the beast can only tremble in silence, utterly broken by the unbelievable power he just witnessed. The wizard dangles helplessly from a cliff, begging for his life, while the crafter coldly mocks him for wasting all his magic. Trembling in fear, the wizard confesses he's completely out of mana, to which the crafter simply calls him an idiot for his foolishness. He then offers to save the man who attacked them, but on one condition: he must first sincerely apologize to Sheikah. Without a moment's hesitation, the wizard screams a desperate, groveling apology, shocking even the crafter with his immediate compliance. But the humiliation isn't over, as the crafter reveals a second demand, stating he can't get paid if the wizard falls to his death. With a predatory grin, he demands his foe hand over every last coin he possesses as payment for his life. After being robbed blind, the terrified wizard is sent running away with a final warning that there won't be a next time. As his foe disappears into the caves, the crafter stands alone with his fairy companion, the impossible weapon resting at his side. Suddenly, just as the danger seems to have passed, the impossibly strong warrior stumbles, his body completely giving out. He collapses in exhaustion, admitting that despite his power, a crafter's body isn't built for fighting, revealing a shocking and critical weakness. Just as he's recovering, the adventurers he saved approach him, completely in awe of his power. But instead of simple thanks, their leader makes a shocking request. He wants to buy the very weapon that saved them. They desperately offer a staggering sum of 300,000 gold, an amount that immediately gets his fairy companion's attention. He questions the price, trying to downplay the weapon's value while Sheikah frantically signals him to take the deal. The adventurer passionately objects, revealing the weapon's name and its impossibly high enhancement level, a true legendary tier item. He reminds the crafter that this isn't a game. Normal adventurers can't risk their lives endlessly farming for a 1 in a million drop. This gives the level 999 warrior a moment of clarity, realizing just how different his reality is from everyone else's. With a newfound perspective, he agrees to the sale, instantly boosting his funds and bringing him one massive step closer to his ultimate goal. Leaving the deadly dungeon far behind, they finally return to the bustling streets of a nearby city. His companion celebrates their incredible fortune, having hit 2 unexpected jackpots in a single day. The level 999 crafter reveals with a smile that he's come up with a brilliant new idea. He declares they should stop dungeon diving for a living, leaving his companion utterly stunned. She tearfully argues they can't survive the lower floors after almost dying to just one dragon. But just as she despairs, he summons his power, reminding her of their ultimate advantage. With a confident grin, he materializes a weapon, reminding her they have his legendary crafting ability. In a flash of insight, his companion finally understands the true scale of his plan. She realizes that in this world, his crafted items have insane demand, and they just need to sell. He clarifies their real goal: find cheap materials to craft into items with massive profit margins. She doubts they can find something so convenient, but he assures her with absolute confidence they will. He then leads her to a grand building, declaring it the perfect place to start their new venture. He throws open the doors to the grand building he'd pointed out, declaring with a sinister grin that they've arrived at the place where gold changes hands most often. As the entrance bursts open, a brilliant golden light spills out, hinting at the unimaginable wealth inside. They've stepped into the legendary auction, a private hall where only the richest and most powerful gather. The air is electric as bids for rare artifacts climb into the tens of thousands in an instant. While his fairy companion is stunned by the staggering prices, the crafter simply smirks, completely unfazed. A single accessory, a pair of earrings, sells for a mind-boggling 90,000 gold. But he knows this is nothing, whispering that the real show is about to start. Suddenly, the next item is revealed: a demonic shield with a starting bid of an insane 100,000 gold. In a flash, the price for the shield explodes, skyrocketing to nearly 500,000 and revealing the true potential of this market. A wealthy noblewoman confidently places the winning bid of a staggering 550,000 gold. The auctioneer brings his gavel down, and the crowd erupts as the legendary shield is officially sold for an astronomical price. But while his fairy companion watches in awe, the level 999 crafter just smirks, revealing that this very shield is now his next crafting goal. He explains that the fierce bidding war proves just how many powerful people are desperate to own that specific item. This sparks a brilliant, greedy idea. He'll simply mass-produce the shield and sell it to every single disappointed bidder who lost. The crafter grins, already imagining the mountains of gold he's about to make by cornering this high-end market. However, crafting the legendary Dark Aegis requires 2 extremely rare materials: dark adamantite and the blood of a fire dragon. He recalls a past battle, confirming they already possess the dragon's blood, a trophy won through overwhelming force. To get the final ingredient, their quest took them deep into the dark and winding corridors of a dangerous labyrinth. But just as they neared their goal, they find their path sealed, and a mysterious voice mocks them for running out of power. The crafter offers a simple mana potion to the exhausted adventurer blocking his path, but with a devilish grin, he demands an outrageous price of 1,000 gold. Fully aware he's exploiting them, he inwardly admits this was his plan all along, to make a fortune off the struggles of his fellow adventurers. In fact, his scheme worked so well he even got carried away, setting traps to generate more desperate customers. Back in the present, another adventurer complains about the high price of his new item, but the crafter just smirks, explaining that his creation lets you walk through deadly traps completely unharmed. His overpowered gear immediately sparks a chaotic bidding war, as everyone desperately tries to buy their own safety. But just as the money starts pouring in, a nearby elven girl suddenly senses an approaching danger. A moment later, his fairy companion screams out his name in a desperate, panicked warning, as a horde of monstrous, flame-wreathed beasts charges down the narrow corridor right towards them. Both the crafter and his fairy companion let out a scream of pure, unfiltered terror, and he instantly turns to flee, kicking himself for getting too absorbed in haggling over prices. But the monstrous hounds are relentless, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Sheikah questions why they don't just fight, but he shouts back that there are far too many and he can't risk her getting hurt. Their desperate escape slams to a halt as they find themselves completely trapped at a dead end. But just as despair sets in, a wicked grin spreads across the crafter's face as he pulls out his mysterious cube. In a flash of brilliant light, he materializes an impossibly large weapon known as the blast hammer. He roars with confidence, declaring that this narrow corridor is the perfect kill zone to wipe them all out at once. With a mighty swing, he unleashes a devastating wave of pure, crackling energy down the hallway. The overwhelming power completely annihilates the charging horde, turning the one-sided threat into a one-sided slaughter. After the dust settles, he checks on his tiny companion, relieved that their risky plan worked perfectly. But just as he prepares to move on, the very ground beneath him begins to crack with unstable energy. In an instant, the entire floor shatters, a shocking consequence of his own overwhelming attack. He plummets helplessly into the pitch-black abyss below, his triumphant moment turning to sheer terror. After a brutal impact, he can only groan in agony, realizing that if this were the real world, that single fall would have been fatal. Frustrated, he curses his own stupidity for repeating the exact same mistake as the arrogant mage he'd just defeated. Suddenly, a worried voice cuts through the darkness as Sheikah desperately flies down after him. She frantically asks if he's alive, but he can only confirm he survived, thanks to the system's hit points. Now trapped in the suffocating dark, he pulls out his glowing cube, knowing their first priority is to create some light. With a flash of light, he instantly crafts a glowing lantern, banishing the suffocating darkness around them. But the illumination reveals a shocking truth. They've fallen into a vast, high-tech facility, not a simple cave. Suma immediately recognizes the style, realizing they've stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient civilization from the game he once played. They cautiously move through the silent, metallic corridors, the air thick with untold history and a sense of dread. Suddenly, Sheikah lets out a terrified scream, pointing towards a massive silhouette looming in the shadows. Suma's eyes widen in stunned disbelief as he lays eyes on the impossible figure. Before them sits a legendary raid boss, a mechanical titan known as the Grand Guignol, which shouldn't even exist here. While Sheikah trembles in fear, a wild, excited grin spreads across Suma's face at the sheer insanity of this discovery. He analyzes its features, identifying it as the Eve model, an exceptionally dangerous variant from the series. As his fairy companion asks what they could possibly do, Suma calmly assesses the sleeping giant, a dangerous plan already beginning to form. Ignoring her protests, Suma grabs his fairy companion, telling her to stay put while he investigates the titan. A greedy grin spreads across his face as he realizes this legendary boss drops materials that could make them a fortune. Sheikah screams in terror as he recklessly leaps onto the head of the giant mechanical monstrosity. He confidently assures her that the machine is completely shut down and poses no threat. But just as he says that, the titan's eye suddenly flares to life with an ominous green light. A massive arm swings upwards, violently throwing him off as he yells for Sheikah to get back. A strange pod then rises from the robot's back, bathing the chamber in an eerie, powerful glow. Suma stares in confusion, his earlier confidence completely gone, while a terrified Sheikah peeks out from behind him. The strange coffin-like device begins to open, its power surging as he wonders what he's just unleashed. From within the light, a female android with a cold, lifeless gaze emerges, its activation signaling a whole new level of danger. The story jumps forward to a strangely peaceful day where the newly awakened android, now dressed as a maid, complains about finding dust. She then calls her new master high maintenance, a bizarrely personal comment for a weapon of mass destruction. But she follows this by saying that serving him is all the more rewarding, leaving Suma utterly speechless. He clutches his head in total disbelief, wondering how he ended up with a robot maid after barely surviving a raid boss. Flashing back to the moments just after her activation, this same being was a dormant weapon, awakening from its ancient slumber in a wash of green light. She had suddenly collapsed right in front of him, her power seemingly exhausted after activation. His analysis revealed the terrifying truth. She was the human-sized core of the legendary raid boss, the Grand Guignol. This made her a foe on a scale that the dragon he previously defeated couldn't even compare to. He had prepared for the worst-case scenario, but this was something else entirely. And yet, faced with this impossible new reality, the level 999 crafter prepares to move forward. Her mechanical eye glows, locking onto the level 999 crafter and identifying him as player Suma. And before he can react, the raid boss core shockingly declares him her new master. He quickly realizes with dawning horror that this ultimate weapon has lost all her memories and somehow imprinted on him. Unable to shake her, he brought her back to his room, only for the android to begin cleaning with a terrifying, relentless efficiency. She even starts criticizing the state of his room while tidying everything in sight. And soon his own fairy companion sides with the machine, both of them ganging up on him for being messy. The former raid boss then introduces herself as Eve, leaving Suma to mutter how this situation is just as nonsensical as Sheikah's own monster curse. Deciding to put the madness aside, he declares they're heading back to the labyrinth and orders Eve to stay behind and do chores. A tense silence falls between the crafter and the ancient weapon as they stare each other down. But instead of defiance, Eve simply bows and wishes him well, leaving him and Sheikah utterly bewildered by her perfect obedience. As they descend into the labyrinth, Suma can't shake the mystery of why an ultimate weapon would suddenly behave like a common maid. He speculates that her core programming must be reverting to some kind of hidden lore, a concept that leaves Sheikah completely baffled. The truth, however, is far deeper, revealing that the Grand Guignols were created by an ancient civilization, and Eve's personality is a direct copy of a real maid from that forgotten era. Deciding to shelve the bizarre revelation for now, the level 999 crafter puts the strange android out of his mind. His focus shifts back to his true objective, gathering rare materials for his next god-tier creation, but his train of thought is suddenly cut short. Standing before them is another party of adventurers, blocking their path deeper into the dungeon. But this isn't a random encounter, as their leader, a paladin named Oliver, recognizes Suma immediately. Oliver nonchalantly introduces him as an old friend, a weirdo who mastered a supposedly useless and disadvantaged job. Suma takes offense to his class being called pointless, only for another party member to mock him for not denying that he's a weirdo. The paladin's friendly demeanor vanishes in an instant, however, as he gives his team a chillingly serious warning. Whatever you do not underestimate this man. Oliver's team exchanges nervous glances, with one whispering a grave warning about the crafter's deceptively high stats. But the tension is broken when their mage playfully asks if the two men are actually friends. Both men instantly deny it, claiming they're just acquaintances in a synchronized rejection that only makes them seem closer. The friendly banter dies as Oliver gets serious, demanding to know what happened to Suma's sister, who is always by his side. Suma hesitates, unable to find the right words as the weight of the question hangs in the air. After he explains the unthinkable that his companion was transformed into a monster, the entire party is left in stunned disbelief. Oliver scoffs, suggesting it's more likely Suma has gone mad and started keeping a pet that resembles her, which infuriates the tiny fairy. He then coldly dismisses the desperate situation, stating he has no time to help with such a far-fetched problem. Yet, a flicker of concern crosses his face as he recalls the staggering sum of 100 million gold needed for the cure. The paladin then reveals a critical piece of information they aren't even blood-related, making Suma's unwavering devotion all the more profound. Suma looks on with unwavering conviction, stating that his devotion is only natural, and he proudly declares she's a sister to be proud of, which only makes the tiny fairy more flustered. His resolve is rooted in a tragic past, starting with the day he lost his parents in a sudden accident. Left with no relatives to rely on, the young boy faced a completely bleak and lonely future. But in his darkest moment, a ray of hope pierced through the despairing rain. The Sao Tome couple reached out to him, offering the crying child a new family when he had nothing. As friends of his parents, they took him in, and it was there he first met their quiet daughter, Sheikah. Though shy and withdrawn at first, she slowly opened up and accepted him as if he were her real brother. This is the truth behind his bond. She is both his precious sister and the daughter of the benefactors who saved his life. And that is why, no matter what it takes, he is determined to save her, his silent vow echoing as he's called back to the present. Deep within a cavern of shimmering crystals, the level 999 crafter continues his search for rare materials. Suddenly, his fairy companion Sheikah excitedly announces she's found a huge piece of dark adamantite. He praises her exceptional scouting skills, leaving the tiny fairy flustered with pride. But his smile vanishes as he stares at the ore, his mind returning to his grim and singular purpose. He silently reaffirms his vow to turn her back to normal no matter the cost, a promise that makes her blush deeply. She points out a massive vein of the ore, but he calmly explains they'll need twice as much to mass-produce the item he has in mind. Just as he suggests they press deeper into the cave, a faint, desperate plea for help echoes from the shadows. His eyes widen in shock as he recognizes the fallen adventurer as one of the paladin Oliver's men. The man lies helpless on the cold stone floor, clearly writhing in agony from some unknown affliction. While Sheikah panics at the sight, Suma quickly analyzes the situation, realizing the man is suffering from a deadly status ailment. Without hesitation, the level 999 crafter activates his analysis skill to diagnose the mysterious poison. He realizes that by searching for a cure, he can reverse engineer the identity of the monster responsible. But the results leave him utterly shocked, revealing an enemy far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The culprit is a mutant venom drake, a monstrosity that has no business being in these low-level caves. The scene then cuts away to a quiet room overlooking the bustling city. On a high tower, a lone figure in a maid's uniform stands guard, observing the world below. It is Eve, the ancient raid boss core now inexplicably bound to her new master. She silently reaffirms her mysterious new purpose, a duty she is determined to fulfill. Back in the cave, Suma considers that standard venom drakes are manageable threats he could easily dispatch. But a mutant variant is on a completely different level, a beast so powerful that even a top-tier paladin would be overwhelmed. Sheikah questions just how strong this new enemy could possibly be, but Suma explains, the true horror isn't its stats. It's the beast's venom, a unique toxin completely immune to both antidotes and magic, spelling certain doom for its victim. With the poisoned man fading fast, Suma admits he can't craft a cure without the proper materials, leaving them with no options. But just as all hope seems lost, Sheikah offers a temporary potion to keep the man alive a little longer. Suma makes a grim decision, realizing they have no choice but to venture deeper into the deadly cavern themselves. Before them lies a single path downward, a gaping maw that will lead them straight into the paladin's last known location. Refusing to stand by, Sheikah volunteers to scout the treacherous path ahead, darting into the darkness. She flies down with fierce determination, ready to use her unique fairy abilities to uncover the dangers below. Suddenly, she finds herself in a vast chamber choked with a poisonous miasma, the terrifying sounds of battle echoing around her. Her report back to Suma confirms their worst fears. The paladin and his knights are nowhere to be found, lost within the toxic haze. Suma calmly dismisses the danger to the paladin, confident his skills can nullify the toxic miasma. But he quickly clarifies that for them, fighting a powerful variant monster in this poisonous cavern is a suicide mission. Sheikah suggests they abandon this spot and find their materials elsewhere, but Suma immediately shuts her down, insisting they stick to the plan. He reveals that all other gathering areas are far too dangerous, and that staying hidden from the terrifying Drake is their only viable option. When she asks how they'll possibly survive the miasma, he simply pats her head and tells her not to worry, because he has a plan. In a flash, he snatches something directly from her, leaving the little fairy completely bewildered. He reveals a small vial of her own fairy dust, a legendary ingredient known for countering status ailments. Ignoring her flustered protests, he activates his glowing cube, preparing to craft an item on the spot. With a brilliant surge of power, he instantly forges a brand new piece of gear, a shimmering scarf of protection. Now, equipped with an item that can block the deadly miasma, he declares with cold resolve that their exploration can finally begin. Stepping into the cavern, the level 999 crafter is met with a menacing, toxic miasma swirling through the air. He entrusts their path to his fairy sister Sheikah, who confidently agrees to navigate the deadly depths. But their exploration is cut short, as a figure in silver armor is violently thrown past them by an unseen force. A lone knight skids to a halt, bracing with his shield as he reels from the shocking impact. Before them looms a monstrous purple beast, its arm raised to deliver another crushing blow. The knight desperately holds his ground, his armor groaning under the monster's overwhelming power. Recognizing Suma, the paladin Oliver grits his teeth in shame, humiliated to be seen in such a pathetic state. Yet he swallows his pride and reaches out, begging the mysterious crafter for his help. He reveals that an anti-serum can be made from the monster's venom glands, a task only Suma can perform. But Suma coldly rejects the plea, stating they have no time to help, and that his own party should be capable of such a simple task. Oliver reveals his party members are already down, completely incapacitated and beyond his ability to save alone. In a desperate plea, he begs Suma for help, promising to pay any price to save his men. A cold smirk crosses Suma's face, as his interest is finally piqued by the mention of a reward. He agrees to help now that money is on the table, activating his mysterious crafting cube. The paladin shouts in relief, overjoyed that the crafter has accepted his desperate offer. But their moment of hope is shattered as the hulking purple beast lunges forward to attack. The monster refuses to let its prey escape, closing the distance in an instant. Its crimson eye glows with malevolent energy as it prepares to unleash a devastating attack. A beam of pure destructive power fires directly at the helpless knight, promising certain death. Yet in an instant, Suma materializes a gigantic magical shield, effortlessly blocking the fatal blow. The monster's devastating beam slams into the instantly crafted shield, unable to break through its immense defensive power. Paladin Oliver, seeing his chance, leaps into the air and smashes his own weapon into the shield, reinforcing the defense against the relentless assault. The beast recoils in shock, its ultimate attack completely nullified by their combined might. But just as the paladin feels a moment of relief, the crafter throws a strange canister right past his head. With a confident smirk, Suma reveals his true plan, taunting the monster with the flashbang he just threw. An impossibly bright light erupts from the device, completely overwhelming the monster's senses. The paladin screams in agony, caught in the blast and momentarily blinded by the crafter's unorthodox tactic. Yet even without his sight, he grits his teeth and swings wildly, landing a solid blow on the stunned creature. He uses the opening to retreat, shouting back that he'll hold it off while counting on Suma to secure the anti-serum. But his escape is cut short as he looks back in horror to see the monster's severed limb has regenerated into a new, terrifying creature right at his heels. The paladin is brutally slammed to the ground, his armor cracking under the immense pressure of the newly formed creature as the monster's eye glows with menacing intent, locking onto its next target. The drake looms over him, but Suma remains calm, fully aware of the danger he now faces. He quickly realizes his flashbang backfired, drawing the full, undivided attention of the enraged beast right to him. The monster unleashes a devastating energy beam, and Suma's desperate attempt to craft a defense is instantly overpowered. With his binding spell shattered, he's completely engulfed by the attack, as his sister screams his name in horror. But just as all hope seems lost, a brilliant column of golden lightning descends from the heavens, interrupting the monster's deadly assault. Suma and Sheikah stare in stunned silence, witnessing this impossible turn of events. A mysterious silhouette with glowing eyes emerges from the light, radiating an overwhelming aura of absolute power. It's Eve, the ancient weapon he awakened, now standing as a guardian between her master and the terrified drake. Eve's menacing silhouette looms over Suma, her eyes glowing with the terrifying power of a raid boss. A cold dread washes over him as he wonders if his own servant has regained her memories as a world-ending enemy. His mind screams in panic, realizing there's no way to win against a being of this caliber in her berserk state. Even without her external armor, he knows the raw power of the legendary weapon is more than he could ever handle. But instead of unleashing a devastating attack, the fearsome android simply holds out a piece of his equipment, leaving him utterly confused. With a completely neutral expression, she states that she has come to deliver something he forgot on the battlefield. Suma can only stammer out a confused "thank you," to which Eve coolly replies that this is all just part of a maid's duty. She then strikes a cute, dutiful pose, completely shattering the life-threatening tension from moments before. The entire group bursts into relieved laughter, thankful that the terrifying raid boss was just being a diligent servant. Eve then seriously adds that since his gear was torn, she was planning to repair it for him later, reaffirming her absolute loyalty to her master. With the previous tension gone, Eve kindly asks her master and his little sister to rely on her more from now on. But their moment of peace is instantly shattered as a monstrous venom drake erupts from the darkness, roaring with fury. Before Suma can even move, his loyal maid steps in front of him, calmly telling him to leave this to her. Her eyes glow with power as she declares that eliminating any threat to her master is simply another one of a maid's many duties. The beast lunges forward with incredible speed, its fangs bared for a killing blow. Yet, the devastating attack is stopped dead in its tracks as the android effortlessly blocks the monster's charge. The drake recoils in shock, unable to comprehend how its overwhelming physical power was completely nullified. In a desperate last-ditch effort, it unleashes a massive cloud of deadly poison to melt its opponent. As Sheikah cries out in alarm, Suma simply watches on, explaining that poison is completely useless against an automaton. Unharmed and unimpressed, Eve stares down the beast, ready to end this completely one-sided fight. Without a word, the android maid unleashes a blinding sphere of pure energy directly at the drake. She then zips past the monster's head in an instant, moving too fast for it to even track. A rapid-fire barrage of energy blasts follows, hammering the beast at point-blank range. She finishes her combo with a devastating punch that rocks the monster to its core. But even as the drake swings a massive claw in a desperate counter, she remains completely unfazed. Suddenly, the injured paladin Oliver roars in defiance, refusing to let her fight alone. He charges forward to draw the beast's attention, while Eve continues her relentless assault from above. At the same time, Sheikah's eyes begin to glow as she activates her unique monster analysis skill. She instantly identifies the drake's fatal weakness, shouting for them to aim for the back of its neck. Yet Suma calmly observes the battle, concluding that despite their efforts, their damage is still overwhelmingly insufficient. He realizes that even his legendary servant's firepower is lacking against this monstrous foe, and quickly dismisses the idea of healing the fallen paladins, knowing it won't be enough. With a flash of grim determination, he activates his crafting cube and screams the paladin's name. He demands Oliver hand over every item he possesses, a shocking request in the middle of a losing battle. Despite his confusion, the paladin agrees, trusting the crafter's insane promise to forge a winning weapon right now. Suma smirks with unshakable confidence, declaring they'll win because of the maid he has by his side. His mysterious cube flares with an otherworldly light, deconstructing and reassembling materials in an instant. A brilliant golden weapon materializes from nothing as he yells for his servant to take it. Eve turns with deadly focus, catching the newly forged item in midair. The weapon seamlessly attaches to her arm, transforming into a cannon of overwhelming power. But this wasn't an arm cannon. It was a devastating kick that unleashed a blinding torrent of golden energy. The blast of pure lightning slams directly into the drake's face as the beast roars in absolute agony. This overwhelming power comes from a brand new weapon system, the doll's gear, lightning-heavy greaves. With cold, focused eyes, Eve channels all of her might into this single, decisive blow. The attack tears straight through the monster's chest, a flash of light signaling its imminent demise. But she's not done yet. Materializing a blade of pure energy to strike a critical weak point, the resulting explosion of golden lightning completely obliterates the drake from the inside out. She lands gracefully as the weapon dematerializes, and the monster's massive body begins to crumble. Silence falls upon the ruined battlefield, with Eve standing as the sole, unquestionable victor. A system window then confirms her total victory, rewarding her with the incredibly rare Venom Drake's jewel. With the battlefield shattered and the drake defeated, Paladin Oliver can hardly believe they survived, but Suma simply reminds him that victory was never in doubt. Nearby, the rest of the adventurer party breathes a sigh of relief, thanking the mysterious crafter for saving them from a fight that should have been their last. Suma then hands over a crucial antitoxin, a simple gesture that hides the immense power he was forced to reveal just moments ago. With the immediate danger gone, he turns his attention to his newly awakened servant, the legendary raid boss Eve. He recalls the bizarre moment she first awakened, an all-powerful weapon who inexplicably called him master. Now, she formally bows and thanks him for entrusting her with the power to win the battle, pledging her complete loyalty. Suma tries to downplay his genius, claiming the newly crafted weapon was simply the most logical choice for maximum damage output. But his sister Shika isn't buying it, teasing him for his false modesty until he finally snaps in embarrassment. Flustered, he declares that if Eve is going to be his maid, she'll also work as a combat unit to earn a fortune, threatening to find a new master if she refuses. Yet, the legendary weapon simply accepts her new role with unwavering calm, ready to follow any command her new master gives. After the battle, Suma's party reviews their massive profits and the priceless rare materials dropped by the drake, just as a system notification officially confirms the legendary raid boss, Eve, has joined their party. But meanwhile, in a lavish mansion far away, their actions have attracted some unwanted attention. A subordinate reports to his master that the mysterious crafter has gathered the materials for the Dark Aegis and is nearing mass production. The arrogant noblewoman on the throne smirks, deciding it's time to put this surprisingly capable craftsman back in his place. A few days later, a cry of sheer disbelief echoes from a workshop as a man marvels at a Dark Aegis shield with an unheard-of +99 enhancement value. He eagerly pays a fortune for the masterpiece, but Suma simply calls his methods a trade secret. The grateful client then offers to procure any rare weapon Suma desires, an offer he seriously considers. Finally, Suma reveals the simple truth of his success. Defeating the drake gave them access to a mountain of dark adamantite, enough to craft 5 of the god-tier shields. Suma explains his brilliant strategy is to target the wealthy explorers who lost out at the recent auction. By selling directly, he not only avoids massive fees, but also creates new business opportunities for himself. He then reveals with a smirk that while making the shields, he acquired another rare weapon entirely. It's the Great Bow of Malice, a terrifying custom piece forged from the very core of the Venom Drake variant. His client sweats, desperate for the legendary weapon but lacking the funds, forcing Suma to propose a different kind of deal. In exchange, the man reveals a secret gathering of elite hunter-class explorers, deep within the dungeon's middle floors. After securing a promise for future priority on rare items, the two part ways on excellent terms. But as Suma walks through town, a familiar voice suddenly calls out his name. His sister Shika zips toward him, eagerly asking how his business venture went. He proudly shows her the massive profits, calculating that they are well on their way to earning the fortune needed to cure her curse. As they walk, Eve congratulates her master on his successful business dealings. He proudly reveals they've nearly hit 3 million gold, a massive sum that brings hope to his cursed sister. But Eve, ever the pragmatist, coldly points out this is only 3% of their colossal 100 million gold goal. Suma just smirks, revealing with terrifying confidence that he's already planning his next big move. Though his companions are desperate to know the plan, he decides to keep his cards close to his chest for now. Instead, he reveals his immediate target, finding a buyer for the legendary Great Bow of Malice to fund his grand scheme. His plan takes them to a hidden settlement deep in the dungeon, a bustling hub for elite hunter-class adventurers. Wasting no time, he sets up a stall, hawking a wide selection of high-quality essentials crafted with his unique skill. A crowd quickly gathers as he calls out to them, inviting everyone to see the wares of a master craftsman. Then, with a cunning grin, He announces his ultimate featured item, ready to shock the entire market. He presents the legendary Great Bow of Malice, a weapon that leaves the entire crowd of hunters completely stunned. Suma immediately pressures a potential buyer, aggressively pitching the weapon as a perfect fit for his level. But the hunter recoils in fear, sweating as he desperately tries to refuse the incredible offer. Suma quickly senses that something is deeply wrong, as a strange tension fills the air. The other adventurers whisper amongst themselves, noticing that not a single item, not even basic arrows, has been sold. It's not the price that stops them. It's a paralyzing fear of the consequences for buying anything at all. Suddenly, a hulking figure steps forward, ready to enforce his unspoken rule. He introduces himself as Hayato, a high-rank predator, demanding to know who gave Suma permission to operate in his territory. Suma just stares back with cold, dead eyes, completely unfazed by the blatant threat. Enraged by this silent defiance, the hunter glares down, demanding to know who the hell this newcomer thinks he is. Suma calmly reveals his identity as a crafter, asking if there's a problem. But the hunter and his cronies burst into laughter, mocking his class as a useless, master-of-none piece of trash. Suma's expression remains completely unchanged, thinking to himself that this kind of reaction is nothing new. Hayato then intimidates the other adventurers, telling them to buy his superior weapons instead of anything from a loser like Suma. Suddenly, everything clicks into place as Suma realizes this man is monopolizing the entire market through fear. But the hunter crosses a fatal line, looking at Shika and insulting Suma's terrible taste in pets. In a flash, Suma's calm facade shatters, his eyes glowing with a terrifying and murderous rage. His maid Eve then steps forward, asking which weapons are Hayato's before declaring all of them to be worthless junk. The predator's eye twitches in pure disbelief, utterly stunned by the disrespect from this newcomer's party. With blinding speed, Suma grabs the hunter by his collar, challenging him to a duel according to the hunter's code. Hayato sets the duel's terms, offering a one-sided bet where only Suma has something to lose, but the crafter flatly refuses. With a cold smirk and crackling energy, Suma mocks the predator's cowardice, asking if he only fights battles where he can't be hurt. His eyes glowing with terrifying intent, Suma demands the stakes be equal. If Hayato loses, he too will face permanent exile. The sheer pressure radiating from their confrontation sends a shockwave through the onlooking crowd. Pushed into a corner, the enraged hunter furiously accepts the life-altering terms. But he adds his own brutal condition, promising a merciless beating if Suma is the one to lose. With a sadistic grin, he declares the rules for their duel, a contest of crafting and archery, where the first to land a hit is the winner. Hayato then immediately fires an arrow, boasting he'll show the crafter the massive difference between their classes, only for his shot to be intercepted by a beam of light. The predator can only stare in utter disbelief as his projectile is completely vaporized before it even gets close. Suma casually waves his hand, dismissing the attack with a simple apology, revealing he stopped the duel before it even truly began. In response to his opponent's pathetic attack, Suma reveals his own creation, a divine bow named Brahmastra that guarantees a perfect homing shot. He scoffs, annoyed at having to use such rare and expensive materials for a mere duel, a memory flashing through his mind. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the predator Hayato pants heavily, having just completed his part of the crafting challenge. Utterly exhausted and humiliated, he glares at the hundreds of arrows he was forced to make, vowing to make Suma pay for this disgrace. Abandoning all pretense of a fair fight, he activates a sinister skill, unleashing a torrent of green energy with a furious beast call. Back in the arena, Suma senses the ominous shift in the air, his companions immediately noticing his concern. Suddenly, the predator's call is answered as a horde of demonic beasts with glowing eyes materializes from the shadows. The onlookers can only stare in horror as the swarm of monsters descends upon them, turning the duel into a massacre. Chaos erupts as the crowd scatters in a panic, their duel for honor now a desperate struggle for survival. But just as the first beast lunges, Suma's loyal maid Eve moves like a flash of light, effortlessly bisecting the monster to protect the innocent. Eve quickly analyzes the chaotic monster attack, realizing it's far too coordinated to be random, and Suma immediately deduces this is the work of the humiliated predator, Hayato, seeking his twisted revenge. But as Shika panics, Suma calmly explains that this entire stampede is likely just a diversion for something far more sinister. Putting himself in the predator's shoes, he realizes the true prize isn't the destruction of the town, but something else entirely. And in that instant, a sudden flash of danger makes his blood run cold. As an assassin's arrow nearly finds its mark, he deflects it just in time, confirming the terrifying truth. He is the target. Suddenly, the sky darkens with a rain of deadly, glowing arrows, all aimed directly at him. With no other choice, he decides to counterattack directly, even as Shika warns that the shooter is impossibly far away. Ignoring the odds, Suma instantly crafts a powerful bow and prepares an unbelievable long-range countershot. He unleashes his attack, a swirling torrent of magical energy that tears through the air towards a target no normal archer could ever hope to hit. Far away on his hidden perch, the assassin feels a sudden flicker of energy approaching him. He looks up just in time to see Suma's impossible shot swirling right above his head. But the magical arrow simply dissipates into nothing, leaving the hunter utterly baffled by the failed attack. The predator, Hayato, scoffs at the pathetic attempt, mocking Suma's ignorance of long-range damage fall-off. With a twisted grin, he boasts about his own unique job skill, which completely negates any distance penalties. He relishes the one-sided battle, preparing to rain hell down on Suma, who is helplessly trapped by the beast horde. Hayato then pulls out his true trump card, a special explosive arrow meant to finish the job. But in that split second, his eye widens in pure, unadulterated terror as he realizes the horrifying truth. A massive explosion erupts directly in his face, a perfectly delivered bomb that he never saw coming. Blasted from his roost, he plummets toward the ground, desperately believing his high HP can tank the catastrophic blow. His own explosive arrows rain down on him, engulfing the arrogant hunter in a fiery, agonizing blast. From a distance, Suma calmly lowers his bow, having just returned the deadly attack with impossible precision. He reveals his cunning strategy with a cold smirk, questioning if his foe really expected him to fight fair. The onlookers erupt in cheers, thanking Suma profusely for liberating them from the tyrant Hayato's oppressive rule. Suma simply directs them to his stall where Eve is already handling sales, stating their business is all the thanks he needs. But Shika raises a critical point, worrying that the verbal agreement of banishment won't stop Hayato from returning for revenge. Hearing this, one of the lead adventurers steps forward with a grim expression, proposing a formal request to Suma. He explains that their gathering area wasn't natural, but a base built from scratch by explorers deep within the Phantom Labyrinth. It was founded and run by a council of 10 powerful, high-tier hunters who created a safe haven for everyone. However, they all mysteriously vanished until only one remained, that man, Hayato, who used his position to seize absolute control. Suma quickly understands that Hayato's absolute power stemmed from being the sole admin of the base, a system he knows all too well. But the adventurer reveals a chilling rumor that Hayato may have assassinated the other admins to seize that very power for himself. Sometime later, Suma travels with the man to a new location, finally asking about the secret request he was promised. They arrive before a breathtaking, colossal tree radiating immense power, which the adventurers call the God Tree. The man then makes an insane proposal for Suma to use the entire God Tree as a material to craft them a completely new base. He explains that if they change the base itself, they can permanently lock out the tyrant Hayato and finally be free of his influence. Shika worriedly asks if he can truly accomplish such a monumental feat alone, but Suma calmly confirms that he can make it happen. However, a wicked grin spreads across his face as he makes it clear that a project of this magnitude will require a reward to match. The adventurer enthusiastically agrees, revealing they've pooled together a staggering 5 million gold for the job. With his crafting cube already materializing, Suma smirks and accepts the deal, ready to begin his most legendary creation yet. Suma casually declares he'll finish the colossal project by the end of the day, leaving the adventurers utterly speechless at the impossible timeline. He explains that the secret isn't speed, but an absurd level of multitasking, a concept far beyond their comprehension. With a confident smirk, Suma unleashes not one, but an entire swarm of glowing crafting cubes that fill the forest. He raises his hands like a conductor, commanding the legion of cubes as they converge on the sacred God Tree. A cataclysmic surge of energy erupts from the tree as Suma activates his ultimate skill, Grand Craft. The sheer force of the creation process blasts everyone backward, unable to even stand in the presence of his power. In what feels like an instant, intricate wooden structures begin to materialize perfectly from the living wood. Before they can even process what happened, a magnificent fortress stands complete, and Suma calmly announces the job is done. But elsewhere, the defeated tyrant Hayato collapses in despair, muttering that such power shouldn't exist. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears before him, coldly stating that they saw his every pathetic move. The mysterious figure looms over the terrified Hayato, mocking his pathetic fall from grace and revealing they'd killed for him. As a glowing dagger descends, Hayato desperately screams that his challenge against Suma was all just a terrible mistake. But the enigmatic assassin simply states they've found a much better use for his life, offering no thanks for his service. Meanwhile, back with Suma's party, Their pop-up shop has been a massive success, raking in incredible profits from his custom-crafted gear. Factoring in the colossal 5 million gold reward for building the new base, their total net profit skyrockets to an unbelievable amount. Suma proudly reviews his new fortune of 7 million gold, but realizes it's still just a fraction of the 100 million he needs for Sheikah's cure. He reflects on the recent sales, noting how the auction for his divine bow brought in far more gold than he ever expected. However, Eve, ever the pragmatist, points out their material costs are dangerously high, forcing Suma to consider their business strategy more seriously. While they discuss the impossibility of gathering all the rare materials themselves, a digital message suddenly appears right before them. Sheikah panics as she reads the sender's identity. It's an urgent, non-negotiable summons from the powerful Self-Governance Committee. Eve questions the name Self-Governance Committee as Sheikah frantically flails behind her, clearly terrified of this mysterious group. A sudden lore dump reveals this world as a real-life game, but one that crucially lacks the all-powerful game masters who once maintained order. In the original game, these GMs acted as the ultimate authority, punishing rule breakers and resolving all disputes. But in this new reality, no such check exists, allowing malicious players like the tyrant Hayato to thrive without any consequence. To combat this chaos, the explorers formed their own organization to enforce justice, the very same Self-Governance Committee that has now summoned them. Suma immediately scoffs at their power, pointing out how they let a monster like the Predator run rampant for so long. He deduces their authority is limited, as the labyrinth's immense scale means they can only police the safest, surface-level areas. Just as he finishes his critical analysis, the sound of a door opening signals the arrival of their mysterious host. A man with pale blue hair greets Suma by name, who inwardly expresses his surprise at being summoned like a criminal. The official then deflects his concerns, introducing yet another individual who will finally reveal the true reason for this ominous meeting. A mysterious woman named Ishtar introduces herself, revealing she knows all the rumors about the legendary crafter. She walks forward, her words carrying a shocking weight as she exposes his secret identity as the original game's only level 999 crafter. As Suma listens intently, she continues, revealing he was the sole player to master every single crafting recipe in existence. Suddenly, she invades his personal space and grabs his chin, explaining that his low profile is the only reason his true, overwhelming power remained a secret. She then connects his hidden talent to the impossible creation of the legendary Dark Aegis, confirming that her organization has been investigating him thoroughly. Suma's mind races as he realizes she was the one who purchased that very same legendary shield at a secret auction, questioning her true motives. His eyes narrow with suspicion as he tries to understand the true reason for this ominous summons. But Ishtar cuts straight to the point, announcing that this isn't a request, but a demand. Her ultimatum is completely absurd. She orders him to immediately stop selling his so-called counterfeit rare items. Utterly baffled, Suma points out his creations are genuine, only for Ishtar to smugly retort that the reason he must stop should be obvious. She reveals her absurd reason. His masterfully crafted items are lowering the value of her personal collection. Suma explodes in rage, unable to comprehend her completely selfish and ridiculous logic. A committee official then intervenes, declaring that Initiator Ishtar wishes to resolve this through a formal duel. Hearing this, Suma falls silent as he processes the sudden and dramatic escalation. He recalls his recent life-or-death battle with Hayato, realizing this is a familiar but far more dangerous game. The stakes flash through his mind as he pictures his sister Sheikah, remembering the 100 million gold he desperately needs to cure her. He knows refusing is pointless. As a woman this powerful would just interfere through other, more ruthless means. But then, a new thought strikes him as he realizes accepting this duel might actually be his best move. If he wins, he'll gain official approval and incredible publicity from the Grand Arena duel. His only concern, however, is Ishtar's overwhelming confidence, sensing she is far more than an ordinary explorer. Sheikah scoffs at the title of Initiator, dismissing it as nothing more than a beginner-exclusive starter class. But Suma turns with a grim expression, explaining that's precisely what makes his new opponent so terrifying. He realizes that while her class is weak, her real-world wealth grants her power on an entirely different level. This means she'll just hire a specialized combat representative for the duel, and the true challenge is whether he can defeat that unknown powerhouse. Ishtar simply smirks, openly threatening to use other, more ruthless methods if he dares to refuse her challenge. Backed into a corner, Suma accepts the duel on the condition that she admits defeat if he wins, a vow she makes upon her pride. Later, his loyal servant Eve questions the wisdom of this choice, warning that the hired champion is certain to be overwhelmingly powerful. She bluntly states that with his current abilities he stands almost no chance of winning, a fact Suma doesn't even try to deny. After all, his stats as a pure crafter are pitiful compared to a combat class like a paladin, making a direct fight seem impossible. Yet with his sister's life on the line, he declares he never would have accepted without a secret plan to win, shocking everyone in the room. Suma reveals his trump card, formally asking his loyal maid Eve to fight as his champion in the upcoming duel. Though she must comply with his command, she immediately questions if he's overestimating her true capabilities against such an unknown foe. Her analysis reveals their opponent will likely be a powerhouse, giving them a slim 30% chance of victory at best. Suma is shocked the odds are that high, earning him Eve's silent fury for underestimating her so badly, but he calmly reassures them they have a path to victory, reminding her of their past battle against the Venom Drake. He explains that her raw power wasn't enough back then. She only won because he crafted a weapon that massively amplified her strength. With a confident smirk, he reveals he possesses recipes for endgame tier ultimate weapons, ready to be crafted as needed. He makes the critical mistake of calling them pet equipment, leading to an intimidating glare from Eve that makes him instantly take it back. However, Sheikah brings up the one fatal flaw in his plan. They have no way to acquire the ultra-rare materials needed for such items. Her mind spirals into a panic as she realizes gathering them is impossible and buying them is too expensive, leaving them completely stuck. Just as Sheikah spirals into despair, Suma calmly reveals he already has a plan to acquire the impossible materials. His audacious solution is to harvest the legendary raid boss, Grand Guignol, itself. For this mechanical corpse holds the very key to their path to victory. Without hesitation, he begins dismantling the ancient war machine with his bare hands. Piece by piece, he expertly extracts one priceless, ultra-rare component after another. Even Sheikah excitedly joins the harvest, amazed that such treasures were left completely untouched. Suma explains this is only possible thanks to the labyrinth's mysterious self-repairing function, but just as he's working, he is suddenly interrupted by an approaching voice. His loyal maid Eve appears, presenting a basket overflowing with even more materials from her own search. With their impossible mission a success, Eve entrusts the final, critical task of crafting the ultimate weapon to her master. Sheikah wonders about Eve's ability to generate weapons, but the android sadly reveals that function is lost. It was a core part of her very being, but that ability was tragically erased along with all her memories. Suma knows this is a huge loss, as automaton-type monsters were known for this terrifying power. He recalls the overwhelming might of Grand Guignol's original sentinels and their exclusive, self-generated weapons. Determined to find a solution, Suma approaches his loyal maid to probe the depths of her lost past. Eve confirms her personal history is inaccessible, but reveals a startling truth. Unidentified, dormant files are locked deep within her memory storage. She believes unsealing these memories could restore her combat functions, but Suma immediately orders her to stop. He realizes with a cold dread that those are her memories as a world-ending raid boss. If that data returns, there's a terrifying chance his greatest ally could revert to his greatest enemy once more. But with his sister's chance to become human again on the line, Eve reminds him that failure in the upcoming duel is simply not an option. Sheikah expresses complete confidence, knowing that any weapon crafted by Suma is guaranteed to be flawless. And Suma calmly accepts their faith, promising to handle everything with his usual unwavering resolve. The scene then cuts to a massive coliseum, where two combatants stand ready for a duel that has drawn the eyes of thousands. On one side stands the champion for the powerful initiator Ishtar, a legendary brawler known only as the Battle Master, Gilbert. But opposing him is the absurdly rare crafter, Suma, who has shockingly chosen his pet automaton, Eve, to fight in his stead. As Sheikah panics at the sheer size of the crowd, Suma realizes with grim relief that no one has recognized Eve's true identity as a world-ending raid boss. In the center of the ring, the rules are laid out, a standard duel where automata are considered defeated the moment they cease to function. Gilbert scoffs at his opponent, believing he's being utterly underestimated by being forced to fight a mere pet monster. Eve, however, coldly advises him to watch his tongue, warning that his arrogance will only make his inevitable defeat more humiliating. From the stands, Suma's analysis reveals a shocking truth. His opponent's level is somewhere in the 600s, a warrior powerful enough to be considered at the absolute level cap. Suma knows a mercenary of this caliber isn't just hired muscle but a deep-layer explorer seeking a true challenge. This makes Gilbert the strongest of his kind, but Suma has absolute faith in the legendary equipment he's given Eve. With a deafening clang of a massive bell, the high-stakes duel officially begins. Wasting no time, Gilbert hefts his colossal weapon, preparing to unleash a devastating opening strike to end it all. But Eve meets his aggression with unnerving calm, her eyes tracking the incoming attack with inhuman precision. The Battlemaster's weapon connects with a mighty roar, only for his own legendary armament to instantly explode into fragments upon impact. The resulting shockwave rocks the entire Colosseum, leaving the crowd wondering if the fight ended in a single, unbelievable moment. Yet through the dust, Gilbert emerges completely unscathed, brushing off the explosion as if it were a minor inconvenience. It's then that everyone sees the source of the impossible defense. Eve has manifested the legendary Dark Aegis, a shield of mythical power. From the stands, the initiator Ishtar watches with a knowing smile, finally seeing the very artifact she secretly purchased brought into the light. The Dark Aegis's hidden eye glows, unleashing a deadly petrification wave. Gilbert is caught completely off guard, his face twisting in furious disbelief. A wave of purple energy surges towards him, a guaranteed instant loss condition with no one to help. The Battlemaster is engulfed by the petrifying aura, seemingly trapped by the curse. But he roars with defiance, revealing he was fully prepared for this exact debuff. Seeing his counter, Eve declares it's her turn, and blitzes forward with impossible speed. Her entire body reconfigures, equipping the Gemini Blade and the Swan Lake hover units. She becomes a blur of white and gold, transforming into a high-speed combat machine. The veteran warrior desperately raises his massive greatsword to defend against the assault. But her strike lands with overwhelming force, shattering his legendary weapon in a single blow. With his weapon shattered, the Battlemaster realizes in a panic that Eve has completely vanished from his sight. But the enraged warrior suddenly appears right behind her, ready to strike back with everything he has left. Her combat systems instantly lock on, analyzing his desperate attack in a fraction of a second. He unleashes a furious counter with his remaining twin blades, a last-ditch effort from a cornered veteran. The impact sends terrifying shockwaves across the arena, horrifying Sheikah, who watches from the sidelines. Yet when the dust settles, it's his secondary weapons that lie shattered on the ground, a testament to her overwhelming power. The Battlemaster, now completely disarmed, tries to intimidate her into surrendering, but Eve calmly warns him against pushing his luck. Suma, watching the one-sided domination, simply reassures his worried sister that everything is going according to plan. Back in the arena, Eve thanks her master for his concern, before declaring that this was all just a warm-up. With a confident smirk, Suma announces that the real battle is only just beginning, as Eve's true power finally awakens. Eve finally unleashes her overload weapon, the gigantic Tyrannos, declaring that the real fight begins now. The Battlemaster Gilbert can only watch in grim anticipation, realizing the maid's warm-up is officially over. He desperately lunges forward with his twin blades, hoping to overwhelm her with a flurry of strikes. But with a single, contemptuous punch, she effortlessly shatters his attack, sending his weapons flying. Pushed to his limit, Gilbert summons his true power, a colossal greatsword seething with raw demonic energy. In response, Eve calmly gathers an impossible amount of light into her gauntlet, preparing to meet his ultimate skill head-on. The two attacks race across the arena, a clash between a veteran's dark power and an android's calculated might. Their techniques collide in a blinding explosion that threatens to tear the stadium apart. When the dust settles, Gilbert stares in utter disbelief as his ultimate weapon cracks and shatters into a million pieces. Yet even with his best weapon destroyed, the warrior's spirit doesn't break as he grabs another axe and lets out a final, defiant roar. Gilbert's last-ditch axe swing is met with contemptuous ease, shattering instantly against Eve's gauntlet. In his rage, he clings to the belief that his master's weapons are the ultimate masterpiece. But Eve coldly declares that her own master's creation could never possibly be outmatched. With a cold glint in her eye, she prepares to demonstrate the true difference in their power levels. She unleashes a single, devastating punch that collides directly with his armored fist. As Gilbert cries out in agony, Suma and his companions simply watch the one-sided beatdown unfold. To his horror, the legendary warrior realizes his own golden gauntlet is being destroyed right off his body. Eve reveals this was the plan all along, as Suma had given her unconventional gear designed specifically to break other equipment. Standing over her defeated opponent, she admits this might be a disappointing end to a duel. However, she then declares his new purpose will be advertising products for her master's sister, a final, crushing humiliation. A final, devastating blow of purple energy seals the deal, leaving the initiator Ishtar completely stunned by the outcome. The entire Colosseum is left speechless, unable to process what they've just witnessed. The announcer's voice booms, declaring an overwhelming and shocking conclusion to the duel. The winner is officially named. Crafter Suma's proxy, the mechanical doll, Eve. No one could have imagined such an ending, with the supposedly weakest job securing a legendary victory. As the defeated Battlemaster Gilbert is unceremoniously carried away, the reality of the power shift sinks in. This isn't just a simple win. It's the dawn of a new era for the entire Phantom Labyrinth, all thanks to Suma. A few days later, the true impact of that duel becomes clear as a massive crowd gathers outside Suma's new base. He smirks, looking over a wall now flooded with high-paying crafting requests, confirming the duel was worth it. While Shika proudly celebrates that her brother's true strength is finally being recognized, Suma can only blush in embarrassment. While Suma gets to work, Eve coldly states that his newfound fame is irrelevant as long as it improves their sales. She then declares her intention to work him like a rented mule, an idea Shika happily endorses for her own sake. With a menacing aura, Eve argues that since she lost both her arms in the duel, it's only fair he works until 5 or 6 of his own are torn off. The trio descends into comical bickering as Suma panics at their impossible demands. But the mood suddenly shifts when Shika sincerely thanks them both for everything they've done. Even the stoic Eve seems touched by her words, while Suma looks on with a gentle smirk. Suddenly, a system notification rings out, interrupting the tender moment as everyone assumes it's just another crafting request. However, Suma reveals it's something far more significant, a transaction notice from the legendary auction house. He explains his master plan to use the duel's fame to create a massive bidding war for his powerful, mass-produced gear. But as the results are revealed, the name of the winning bidder leaves Suma utterly shocked, hinting that a mysterious and powerful figure has just made their move. The auction results are in, revealing that every single one of Suma's legendary items was bought out by the mysterious initiate Ishtar. But Suma isn't angry. He's ecstatic, instantly realizing her brilliant strategy to corner the market and protect the value of her own legendary shield. His companions can only watch in stunned silence, realizing the sheer scale of wealth and power being wielded by the world's elite. The auction brings in an astronomical amount of gold, a fortune for any normal adventurer, yet it's still just a drop in the bucket for Suma's ultimate goal. Meanwhile, in the city's dark alleys, a bitter mage named Ignis seethes with rage after his humiliating and public defeat. He sees the news of the auction, confirming his worst fears. The crafter who single-handedly destroyed him is now making moves on a global scale. With his life in shambles and his party gone, he blames his complete and utter downfall on Suma's meddling. But just as he wallows in despair, a mysterious hooded figure emerges from the shadows with a chilling proposition. This shadowy stranger offers him exactly what he desires most, the strength to oppose the unbeatable crafter Suma. Stunned that this stranger knows his name, Ignis's fear quickly turns to desperate hope as a dark alliance begins to form. Ignis demands power from his new ally, but the hooded figure's response is swift and brutal, plunging a glowing dagger right into his chest. The arrogant mage collapses in shock, unable to comprehend the sudden and vicious betrayal. As he screams in agony, the mysterious figure calls this fatal wound a gift, a twisted offering of new power. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the dark plot against him, Suma calculates his earnings, realizing he's still far from his goal and must enact his next major plan. But his loyal servant Eve seems utterly baffled by his strange decision, questioning if this is truly their best move. She looks out at a seemingly ordinary town square, wondering how this could possibly be the grand strategy he's been planning. Suma confidently leads them inside a building, explaining that despite delays, the time is finally right to set his true plan in motion. They are immediately greeted by a well-dressed man who reveals he was expecting the legendary crafter Suma. The man confirms their appointment is to inspect a rental shop, a shockingly mundane goal for someone of Suma's power and influence. It's revealed that Suma's grand plan to earn a massive fortune is not to fight a boss or craft a legendary weapon, but to open his own business. The man explains the rental shop is a perfect, automated business that requires almost no effort to run, but Eve is stunned to hear the rent costs millions, questioning the logic of such a massive investment. The agent quickly assures them the price is justified by the unique advantages the shop provides. He explains it allows an adventurer to fight in the labyrinth while simultaneously selling items, maximizing profit and efficiency. Suddenly, Shika's sharp senses pick up on a dark undercurrent. Realizing the deal is too good to be true, she points out a fatal flaw in his story. A prime location like this should never be vacant. Eve immediately confronts the flinching agent, whose panic denials only confirm their suspicions. He frantically tries to distract them by listing the building's incredible features, from a massive warehouse to an elevator. But his sweaty hesitation reveals he's hiding a terrible secret about the property. He finally confesses there are rumors of a ghost as terrifying phantoms suddenly appear right behind the party. The agent panics, dismissing the haunting as a mere rumor that even troubles the management. He tries to downplay the stories of wandering spirits and missing customers as common, silly tales. But while his companions are terrified, Suma grins with an unsettling excitement, completely unfazed by the horror. He calmly rationalizes the phenomena as either an illusion, a prank, or perhaps a weak monster that wandered to the surface. To Shika's absolute dismay, Suma admits he's actually hoping for a confrontation with a real ghost. Deciding to take precautions anyway, he prepares to instantly craft some holy water and warding talismans. At that very moment, a glowing blue phantom silently materializes just behind his unsuspecting legs. The spirit lunges forward, only to suddenly freeze in utter shock, as if it has sensed an unimaginable power. Shika screams for Suma, frantically warning him that the terrifying entity has finally appeared. But when Suma turns around, he coldly observes that there is absolutely nothing there. Shika panics, confirming the ghost is real, but Suma remains utterly unfazed by the terrifying presence. He calmly explains to Eve that invisibility is a common trait for ghost-type monsters. Yet even Eve, the legendary raid boss, sees nothing. Suspecting Shika's unique fairy nature allows her to perceive what others can't. Unfazed, Suma asks his terrified sister to pinpoint the exact location of the invisible threat. Shika hesitates, her fear making it difficult to even speak a word. Finally, she reveals that the horrifying entity is just standing ominously near the counter. Suma then decides to test this theory, preparing a warding talisman and holy water to force a reaction. He questions the committee member, whose job is to maintain public order, for failing to handle the situation himself. The official helplessly admits that all conventional anti-ghost measures have completely failed, leaving them in serious trouble. But as Suma approaches with the talisman, the ghost suddenly reacts with violent, crackling energy, proving it's no ordinary spirit. Shika bravely presents the holy talisman, but the ghostly figure doesn't even flinch. The warding charm is completely useless, failing to produce any effect on the silent apparition. A cold sweat drips down her face as she realizes her only defense is utterly meaningless against this unknown threat. With no reaction whatsoever, she confirms this entity is definitely not a normal monster. Yet she frantically tries to rationalize the situation, hoping it's just a harmless illusion left by some powerful wizard. Despite her hopes, the ominous presence continues to stand there, radiating a chilling, unmoving aura. Suma observes from a distance, sensing the ghost isn't just haunting the room but is staring intently at something behind the counter. He sends Shika to investigate, but she finds absolutely nothing there. But just as she reports back, a terrifying dark hand lunges out from the shadows behind her. Before she can even scream, the shadowy entity grabs her, revealing its true, horrifying form. The shadowy entity drags Shika into darkness, as her anti-ghost talisman completely fails to react. With a final, desperate cry for Suma, she's swallowed whole by the encroaching shadows. In her place, a ghostly apparition of a young girl suddenly materializes behind the counter. A flashback reveals Shika's terror, realizing her only defense was utterly useless against this being. This meant the entity wasn't a ghost, leaving her to question what kind of horror she was truly facing. In her final moment, her eyes reflected the true, twisted nature of her captor. It was a cursed, broken doll with a horrifying, cracked face, radiating pure malice from the darkness. But rewinding time, we see Suma arriving at the building, already sensing a powerful presence within. He knew Shika would never lie about such things, and decided to trust her senses completely. And so, he began a methodical investigation, preparing to first rule out the possibility of a simple ghost, unaware of the nightmare that had just unfolded. Suma recalls a lonely past, admitting he once wished for ghosts, but the dead never returned for him. Shaking off his dark memories, he turns to the committee official and calls for Shika to proceed with the investigation. But when he calls her name, he's met with a chilling silence, realizing she has suddenly vanished. In a terrifying flashback, Shika understands her captor isn't a ghost, but something far more sinister. The true form of the entity is revealed as Lampus, the dark spirit, clutching the captured Shika in its colossal hand. Trapped and helpless, she realizes all their preparations were useless against this powerful spirit-type monster. She knows that only a powerful light from the outside can save her. But from within this dark realm, she is completely powerless. With her strength fading, she desperately calls out for Suma, her last hope in the suffocating darkness. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the past, revealing the day a young Suma first met his new family. She recalls not understanding why this orphaned boy was now living with them, marking the beginning of their journey as siblings. She recalls that when Suma first arrived, she resented him, feeling like her home was being stolen away. But then she remembers a time she got lost in the pitch-black streets, completely alone. Crying and terrified, she was certain that she was going to die right there in the darkness. That's when a young Suma appeared, a lone flashlight cutting through the despair to find her. In that moment, he became more than just family. He became the most precious person in her world. Suddenly, back in the suffocating void, A colossal blade of golden light tears through the realm, shocking the dark spirit holding her captive. A look of pure, unadulterated joy spreads across Sheikah's face as she recognizes her savior's power. She cries out Suma's name as the holy energy begins to utterly annihilate the monstrous entity. Reaching towards the blinding radiance, she calls for him one last time, her entire being focused on returning to his side. And just like that, she snaps back to reality, colliding with Suma's face as if waking from a terrible dream. Sheikah awakens, flustered and embarrassed, to find herself safe in Suma's arms. While Suma expresses his relief, the dark spirit dissolves behind them as Sheikah breaks down in tears. But the vengeful entity isn't finished, vowing to drag them down with its final, desperate curse. Suddenly, a golden barrier materializes from nothing, completely nullifying the creature's last attack. Suma moves in for the kill, his fist now clad in a radiant weapon of pure, holy light. He coldly informs the monster that it chose the wrong person to mess with. With a single word, the level 999 crafter commands the spirit to vanish, erasing it from existence. Back in the real world, the stunned committee official asks how Suma figured out the ghost's true nature. Suma reveals he knew it was never a ghost, but a far more sinister entity known as a lampus. He then explains how he instantly crafted a holy weapon to exploit its weakness, leaving the terrifying question of why this monster specifically targeted his sister. Suma reveals the monster attacked because his sister saw something she wasn't supposed to, leaving her stunned and confused. It turns out she had spotted a second, fainter ghost watching them from the shadows all along. But when she tried to see what it was looking at, the dark spirit attacked, raising the horrifying possibility that two entities were present from the start. Sheikah struggles to process this terrifying new information, as the pieces of the mystery refuse to fit. Suddenly, a flashback reveals the true ghost's final memory, a silent thank you as it finally found peace and vanished into light. This triggers a horrifying realization for Sheikah as she remembers a dark rumor about an adventurer who vanished after a ghost attack. She finally understands that the friendly ghost was the victim's spirit, desperately seeking someone to avenge its death at the hands of the Lampus. Meanwhile, in a ruined sanctuary, the true mastermind behind the attack screams in disbelief that the Lampus was actually defeated. The arrogant wizard who once challenged Suma rages in fury, his perfect trap now completely dismantled. But from the darkness, a far more sinister presence mocks his failure, laughing at his pathetic and well-deserved downfall. The sinister voice mocks the wizard's roundabout plan to use a mere spirit against the legendary crafter. Now named Ignis, the failed wizard desperately defends his strategy, while being called an idiot for his cowardice. But a new hooded figure emerges from the shadows, calmly stating that the plan's core idea to hurt those around Suma was actually quite effective. A chilling smile spreads across the figure's face, revealing a far more calculated and cruel perspective on how to truly break a hero. The hood comes down to reveal the true mastermind, a man named Diablo, whose presence radiates an entirely different level of authority. Ignis is frozen in utter terror as the shadow of another familiar powerhouse looms over him, showing just how low he is in this dark hierarchy. The new presence is revealed to be none other than Predator Hayato, Suma's old rival, now working for the same master. With menacing eyes, Diablo reminds them both that he is the source of their strength, and delivers a terrifying ultimatum for their failures. As Ignis starts to grovel, Hayato furiously silences him, his patience for the wizard's incompetence completely exhausted. Erupting with newfound confidence, Hayato declares it's his turn to face Suma, promising a far more direct and brutal confrontation. Predator Hayato, burning with hatred, vows that this time he will be the one to slaughter the legendary crafter. But half a month after the ghost incident, Suma's world couldn't be more different, as a massive crowd gathers outside his new workshop. His public victory against Ishtar's champion turned out to be the ultimate advertisement, making his shop an overnight sensation. Inside, Suma puts his level 999 skills to work, establishing a perfect cycle of crafting items and reinvesting the profits. While he poured most of his fortune into this venture, he knew it was a necessary investment for even greater returns. The gamble paid off spectacularly, with the shop raking in millions, and on track to hit a staggering 100 million in just 3 months. Despite this overwhelming success, Suma's gloom returns as he worries about the future, much to the annoyance of Eve and Sheikah. Deciding to stabilize his business further, he announces they'll start accepting custom crafting requests once again, immediately grabbing Sheikah's attention. She excitedly pulls up a strange request from a group calling themselves the Automaton Enthusiasts Club. Suma questions her choice, noting the poor reward for crafting automaton equipment, but the request has clearly captured Eve's silent interest. Sheikah awkwardly admits her reason for choosing the quest is deeply personal. Revealing the club, president is an old friend, she's lost touch with over the years, and she nervously peeks out, worried that Suma will reject her heartfelt plea, but to her shock, he agrees without hesitation, causing both her and the stoic Eve to celebrate wildly. With their new mission accepted, the trio travels to the designated meeting spot in a crowded town square, where Suma voices his concerns about automaton fanatics being weirdos just as Shika excitedly spots their client arriving. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoes on the cobblestone, and a bizarre battle cleric named Violet appears with her own entourage, immediately addressing Suma. Shika, however, is ecstatic, greeting her old friend Sumire with a cheerful wave, leaving the cleric utterly stunned that the tiny fairy is really Shika, a truth she couldn't believe from messages alone. Violet reveals her group is an automaton fan club, completely obsessed with Eve's recent duel performance. But their fanaticism quickly turns creepy as they swarm the android, inspecting every joint and detail of her body. They then callously reveal their true purpose is just to dress up dolls, completely ignoring Shika's presence beside them. Just then, a single feather silently drifts down from the sky over the city square, and Suma's senses flare as he looks up, realizing an attack is imminent. Suddenly, a monstrous avian creature crashes down right behind him with blinding speed, but before it can even strike, Suma explodes into action with a furious counterattack. The beast is sent flying backwards, slamming hard into a stone wall. As the clerics watch in shock, it collapses into a cloud of dust, defeated in a single overwhelming blow that stuns the crowd, and a maniacal laugh rings out, revealing the defeated hunter Hayato, who mockingly declares this is just the beginning of his revenge. Suma stares in disbelief, realizing the predator has returned by somehow becoming a monster himself. Hayato's voice echoes his twisted vow, revealing he abandoned his humanity just for this single chance at revenge. The newly transformed beast snatches Suma and soars impossibly high, carrying him over the helpless city below. He gloats that no amount of power can save Suma from the guaranteed death of a fall from this altitude. With a final taunt, Hayato releases his grip, sending the level 999 crafter plummeting towards the earth. But suddenly, the monster feels a strange tug, and looks back in utter confusion. Suma is now clinging to his leg, calmly defying gravity as Hayato panics, begging him to just fall already. While holding on with one hand, Suma instantly begins crafting, pulling rare magical materials from thin air. A cold smirk spreads across his face as he declares that if he's going down, Hayato is coming with him. In a flash, a massive lightning spell scroll materializes, ensnaring the terrified beast in a golden cage of inescapable magic. The lightning scroll erupts in a blinding flash, engulfing the monstrous predator in a cage of pure, inescapable energy. Suma's eyes burn with cold resolve as he unleashes the full might of his instantly crafted high-tier spell. With the attack over, both the master crafter and the charred beast are sent hurtling back towards the city below. But Hayato, though severely wounded, manages to escape, vowing that this crushing defeat was merely a greeting. Now alone and plummeting towards certain death, Suma realizes his own life is still on the line. His inner thoughts race as he confirms he's out of high-rank materials, completely unable to craft an item for flight. Resigned to his fate, he begins crafting a last-ditch item, anything to avoid becoming a splattered mess on the pavement. Suddenly, his desperate focus is shattered by an impossible sight approaching from below. A powerful, gauntleted hand intercepts his descent, grabbing his arm firmly in midair. It's the paladin Oliver, who has somehow appeared in the sky, demanding to know just what the hell Suma has gotten himself into this time. Still suspended in the sky, Suma casually tries to send a message, reassuring his sister that he's fine. But a cold, unfamiliar voice suddenly cuts through, greeting him by name with chilling familiarity. The voice belongs to a powerful figure who has been observing the entire chaotic sky battle from his tower. He turns, introducing himself as Rune Knight Altair, and demands a full explanation for the city-wide commotion. As a member of the elite autonomous combat unit, he makes it clear that this isn't a request, but an order. Meanwhile, down on the streets, panic spreads as rumors of a human transforming into a monster fill the air. Shika is caught in the chaos with her friends, as the cleric Violet complains about nearly being blown away. Suddenly, a message from Suma appears on a projection, and Shika's face lights up with pure relief. Her joy is cut short, however, as Eve explains that her brother has been summoned by the Self-Governance Committee. The android maid warns that with the authorities now involved, things are about to get far more complicated. Summoned before a powerful figure, the legendary crafter Suma is immediately put on the spot. The man reveals his overwhelming authority as the supreme commander of the Guardians, and declares he has an urgent question. But Suma, completely unfazed by his rank, casually insults the commander's ridiculous cape. An intense stare-down follows as the two powerful men lock eyes, neither willing to back down. Surprisingly, the commander bursts into laughter, admitting that he also hates the over-the-top uniform. He complains about the role being forced upon him, revealing a shared history between him and Suma from their gaming days. Getting down to business, he brings up the Birdman monster and reveals he already knows Suma's attacker was once human. His true concern isn't the monster's identity, but the terrifying truth behind the phenomenon of humans transforming into monsters. Suma is stunned at how fast the information traveled, only to learn the commander had a subordinate on the scene. The commander then drops a bombshell. Rumors of this monsterification have circulated for a while, and Suma's enemy might not be the only one out there. The commander bluntly accuses Suma of being the source of half the rumors about monsterification. Suma awkwardly admits he wasn't exactly hiding his desperate search for clues. But Altair's expression darkens as he warns that with the latest incident, those rumors are now a terrifying reality that will unleash chaos. Suddenly, their tense meeting is shattered as Violet and the others burst in screaming about an emergency. She rushes right past a bewildered Suma, her face a mask of pure panic. He turns just in time to hear the catastrophic news. The material shops in town are in deep trouble. All across the city, adventurers are frantically trying to buy up rare crafting materials. A desperate mob now swarms the merchants, buying anything and everything they can afford. Violet confirms his worst fears, asking if everyone is trying to gather materials for the Philosopher's Stone. And in that moment, Suma realizes the truth has spread. Not just the curse, but the cure is now public knowledge, turning his personal quest into an impossible race. Eve points out the fatal flaw in the public's plan. Only her master is capable of crafting the legendary Philosopher's Stone. But Suma knows this isn't about logic. It's pure panic buying that has completely warped reality. This mass hysteria threatens everything, as the window to gather the materials needed to save Sheikah is rapidly closing. Even the most expensive reagents, like the elixir of Mercurius, are at risk of being bought out by the desperate masses. With a new time limit imposed by the city-wide panic, their original plan to earn the necessary funds is now utterly impossible. Realizing their old strategy is useless, Suma decides they must immediately return to their workshop and forge a new path. Back at the shop, he stands before his worried companions, ready to announce their desperate new plan. He tells a concerned Sheikah that their entire approach has to change if they want any chance of success. Eve confirms the stakes are higher than ever, estimating they have only 1 month before the materials are gone forever. With no other choice, Suma declares their only option is to craft even more expensive items, revealing he already has a lead. Suma reveals his new lead is the Phantom Labyrinth, a dungeon split into 3 increasingly difficult layers of hell. He declares that to accelerate their earnings, they must abandon the safer middle layer and venture into the forbidden depths below. His finger lands on the lower layer, a vortex of pure chaotic energy, where only the strongest survive, but Sheikah immediately flies into a panic, pleading that the lower layer is far too dangerous for them to even attempt. Suma calmly dismisses her fears, reminding her that waiting for materials could take years they simply don't have. Even the legendary automaton Eve seems concerned, turning to Sheikah to ask just how deadly this place truly is. Sheikah shudders, describing a nightmare realm of fire dragons and mutant drakes, a zone where only level 700 players dare to tread. Yet Suma counters this with the ultimate prize, showing how materials from that depth can forge legendary weapons worth millions. He then drops an absolute bombshell, casually admitting he's already been to the lower layer with his old gaming friends. With unshakable confidence, he declares that these old hardcore allies will surely help them if he just explains the life-or-death stakes. Suma admits the high risk of diving into the lower layer, but insists they are out of options, all while Sheikah trembles with fear beside him. The legendary automaton Eve vows to protect her master at all costs, which is just enough reassurance for Sheikah to reluctantly agree to the plan. However, Eve gives Suma a chilling ultimatum, promising to side with his sister if he acts recklessly, forcing a nervous agreement from the level 999 crafter. A look at their finances reveals the brutal truth. They're still a staggering 83 million short, making this suicide mission their only real hope. A few days later, the time for talk is over, as they arrive at the gateway to the deadly dungeon. Suma confirms their worst fears, admitting that there's no shortcut and they'll have to face the lower layer head-on. Just then, they run into one of Suma's legendary friends, a veteran who casually reveals Hez training his own party in that very same hellscape. The veteran adventurer turns to Sheikah, questioning her experience, and she can only compare the dreaded zone to impossible endgame content. He simply smirks with the confidence of a true monster slayer and tells her to brace herself for the absolute worst. With a look of grim determination, Sheikah prepares to enter a realm where even the strongest adventurers are torn to shreds. The veteran reveals a breathtaking world of floating islands, explaining that from here on, they are completely cut off from reality. Shika can only scream in absolute shock, her mind unable to process the impossible landscape before her. It's a realm where the sky is a ceiling and a bottomless abyss separates each floating landmass. He confirms that unlike the upper floors, this lower layer is an environment that defies every known law of nature. The party stands stranded on a single island, paralyzed by the horrifying realization that without the ability to fly, this dungeon is completely unbeatable. All hope drains from Shika's face as the crushing weight of their impossible task finally sinks in. But just as despair takes hold, the veteran spots a massive winged serpent and calmly calls out to his apprentice with perfect timing. A young archer instantly responds, loosing a single arrow high into the sky as a signal. The arrow alerts the magnificent beast as the veteran calls out to the rest of his elite team. Suddenly, two figures on flying brooms soar into the air, snatching giant feathers from the creature and revealing the secret to conquering this impossible world. With the legendary feathers in hand, Suma activates his level 999 crafting ability to forge a path forward. In a flash of light, he creates a custom feather boat, the only vessel capable of navigating this treacherous sky. But as the veteran adventurer escorts him to the edge of their safe zone, he delivers one final, chilling warning. He reveals that a terrifying entity known as Diablo has started appearing in these forbidden lower layers, shocking Suma to his core. When asked what kind of monster this is, the veteran grimly clarifies that Diablo is no monster, he's human. This isn't just any human, but a notorious player killer, a serial murderer who specifically targets and slaughters other explorers. He was once a player who only killed within the game, but has since brought his bloodlust into the real world. Even Shika has heard the terrifying rumors of a veteran player who exploits every system quirk to his deadly advantage. As if their quest wasn't hard enough, Suma now must contend with a ruthless murderer on top of the spreading monsterification curse. He wonders if they can find the cause of the curse itself, just as a colossal beast looms before them on the horizon. Their journey is violently interrupted as a colossal wyvern smashes into their small boat, sending them spiraling out of the sky. Suma instantly recognizes the beast as a Grandis wyvern, a high-level threat appearing at the absolute worst moment. As they plummet towards a volcanic wasteland, Eve desperately asks her master to stabilize their descent, but Suma knows it's useless. The wyvern will just strike again, forcing them into an unavoidable crash landing. Their vessel slams violently into the scorched earth, shattering against the unforgiving terrain. Emerging from the wreckage, Suma and Eve brace themselves for whatever this hostile new land has in store. Shika barely has time to comment on their close call before a massive pillar of energy erupts from the ground beside them. This is no natural phenomenon, but a gargantuan golem of molten rock rising to its full, terrifying height. Suma immediately silences Shika, sensing that they are no longer alone in this desolate hellscape. And just as the veteran adventurer warned, a menacing, shadowy figure begins to emerge from the dust, its presence chilling them to the bone. The shadowy figure calls out in recognition, causing Suma and Eve to freeze in utter disbelief. He reveals himself to be a powerful barbarian named Ban, who marvels at the strange coincidence of their reunion. Suma is thrown back to a memory of coldly rejecting Ban's invitation, vowing to conquer the labyrinth on his own terms. Snapping back to the present, he gives his companions a vague answer, hinting at a complicated history between them. Ban observes the desolate landscape, noting how much has gone wrong on the surface while he was busy grinding in the depths. The conversation then takes a sharp turn as Ban questions the insane market prices for Philosopher's Stone materials. He explains that powerful guilds have hoarded immense wealth, ready to buy out the entire stock in an emergency. A glint appears in Suma's eye as he instantly summons a glowing blue cube, his legendary crafting ability activating. From it, he forges the magnificent Crimson Edge, offering the masterpiece to Ban as a charity purchase. Ban is left completely speechless by the impossible speed of its creation, confirming Suma's absolute mastery. Ban slams his massive axe into the ground, a testament to his raw power. He proudly declares himself an all-in battle axe user, but Suma admits he can't craft a superior weapon without the right materials. The problem, however, is that the lower layer regulars are already kitted out with high rarity drops, making sales nearly impossible. Ban insists that Suma's top-tier craft needs a flashy promotion to even get noticed, enthusiastically suggesting he sell consumables instead. Even Shika and the rest of the party agree it's a solid idea, realizing that everyone always has a demand for supplies. But Suma knows that selling simple items won't be enough to earn the fortune they need in time. With a determined gaze, he reveals his new plan. He's going to fight the deadly lower layer monsters all by himself. Shika is horrified by his reckless decision, but Suma apologizes, explaining that this is the only way. He recalls how the best sales pitch has always been a live demonstration, showing the true power of his gear in action. That's when Ban interjects, arguing that having someone seemingly weak like Soma use the gear is the perfect way to showcase its overwhelming strength. Moved by his friend's resolve, Ban offers to help him farm for materials, a gesture Suma gratefully accepts. And so, with his plan set in motion, a massive banner is slammed into the ground of the treacherous lower layer. With a confident grin, Suma announces that his special pop-up shop is officially open for business, ready to showcase his true power. His first demonstration target is a greater Trent, a terrifying beast that requires a full party of level 700 adventurers. Nearby, two explorers watch in horror as the creature blooms, realizing it can now unleash a deadly cocktail of status effects. As they debate whether to retreat or brute force the fight, a lone figure suddenly leaps right past them. To their utter disbelief, it's Suma, diving headfirst towards the monster without a hint of fear. A powerful green aura explodes around him as he prepares to strike from mid-air. In a brilliant flash, a massive glowing blade materializes and effortlessly severs one of the treant's thick vines. Suma lands perfectly, wielding the very weapon he just created from thin air, ready to prove its overwhelming power to everyone watching. With his custom-forged blade glowing intensely, Suma stands ready to finish what he started. The enraged treant retaliates, whipping its remaining limb forward for a devastating strike. But Suma's attack is faster and far more powerful, unleashing a golden wave that tears the monster apart. The nearby adventurers stare in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mere crafter could possess such destructive force. As the monster disintegrates in a fiery explosion behind him, their minds are blown he actually one-shotted a greater treant. Rushing forward, they demand an explanation for his impossible display of power. Suma coolly replies that the answer is obvious. He simply used his crafted items. He then breaks down his strategy, revealing a complex combination of buff potions, a legendary scarf, and stacked accessory effects. Finally, he presents the custom-forged Crimson Edge, announcing that all of this god-tier equipment is now for sale. The adventurers immediately buy the entire set, netting Suma a staggering 2 million gold in a single transaction. The adventurer, now armed with legendary gear, is ecstatic with his purchase. But as soon as he's alone, Suma finally exhales, the immense power he projected taking its toll. He admits that temporarily boosting a low-spec base puts a serious strain on his own body. It's a necessary gamble, as he knew these hardened explorers would never trust a simple sales pitch. Instead, the live demonstration worked like a charm, and that first 2 million was only the start of his conquest. Even as his loyal companions, Sheikah and Eve, watch on with concern from afar, his sales tour continued by island hopping, where he intentionally tanked a monster's attack to prove his gear's absolute defense, a demonstration that instantly sold another 1.9 million gold worth of equipment. Elsewhere, he showcased unimaginable speed, outrunning an entire pack of lycanthropes without breaking a sweat, and that single feat of mobility earned him a staggering 3.1 million gold, solidifying his items as truly legendary. His final demonstration was the most dangerous yet, accidentally awakening a dark power from deep underground while demoing a new pickaxe. But the risk paid off spectacularly, netting him another 2.8 million gold from the gear and the ancient relics he unearthed. Finally, with their goal met, they acquired a case packed with priceless high-tier spell scrolls. With his friend Ban's help, their total profit soared to an unbelievable 10.8 million gold, successfully ending the campaign. Now with the funds secured, Suma prepares to leave for the next dangerous phase, entrusting his companions to wait for him. But as he walks away, his sister Sheikah watches with a heavy heart, knowing he is pushing himself far beyond his limits. She's crushed by the guilt that all his suffering is for her sake, wishing she could undo her very existence. Suddenly, the stoic Eve steps in, reminding her that for their master, abandoning her was never an option. She urges Sheikah to give him the strength he truly needs, telling her not to apologize for being a burden, but to offer him the one thing that makes it all worthwhile: a simple, heartfelt thank you. Eve vows that she and Sheikah will support their reckless master and cover his weaknesses, which is exactly what he needed during a past field test, where a hulking crystal golem stomped through a frozen wasteland, and Suma descended from the sky, preparing to unleash the full power of his newly crafted weapon. He brought the massive flail down in a single, devastating strike that completely obliterated the monster's head. The sheer force of the blow sent the creature stumbling back, seemingly defeated in one hit. With the weapon's test complete, Suma stood ready to find a buyer for his masterpiece. But to his shock, the shattered golem began to violently pull itself back together. He stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how it could still be moving after such a fatal attack. Suddenly, The fully regenerated monster swung its massive fist, forcing Suma onto the defensive, and in that exact moment of crisis, he realized with horror that his combat buffs had just worn off, leaving him utterly powerless. Powerless and out of time, Suma can only watch as the golem's massive fist descends to crush him. But at the last possible second, his loyal servant Eve throws herself in the way, shielding him from the cataclysmic impact. His companions arrive just in time to check on him, finding their master shaken but miraculously unharmed. Eve sternly reminds him that pushing his limits is unacceptable when his sister's future depends on him. As Sheikah prepares their group to take on the monster, a sinister red energy suddenly begins to swirl from an unknown source. An unbelievable explosion of dark power erupts from behind them, completely engulfing the ice golem. The once invincible creature is instantly vaporized, leaving everyone stunned by this sudden, overwhelming display of force. Sheikah stares at the smoldering crater, horrified that she was nearly caught in that apocalyptic blast. Even Suma and Eve are left speechless as the entire snowfield evaporates, revealing the terrifying origin of the attack. From the flames emerges a legendary class beast, an Inferno Elder Dragon, revealing a threat on a completely different level. Faced with a monster requiring a party of 12 level 999s, Suma knows there's only one obvious order to give. With the colossal dragon roaring behind them, he screams for everyone to run for their lives, a decision no one dares to question. After barely escaping to a secluded cave, Suma begins to formulate an entirely new strategy. Back in contact with his allies, they're stunned to learn he encountered a legendary rare spawn on his very first day in the new zone. They question why he didn't just kill it for its priceless materials, but Suma retorts that a direct fight would have meant instant annihilation. But despite the overwhelming danger, his allies can tell from his determined expression that he isn't about to let this opportunity go to waste. The veteran adventurer on the other end of the line smirks, telling Suma to lay out the details of his audacious scheme. His other companions, however, are completely creeped out by the sheer cold-blooded intensity of his sudden plan. Suma then gives a chilling command: spread the word to every delver in the area that an Inferno Elder Dragon has appeared. His allies immediately grasp the terrifying implications. Leaking this info will cause every prideful, glory-seeking elite to swarm the island for the kill. Sheikah finally grasps the true genius of the plan. By announcing a legendary dragon hunt, Suma is creating an unprecedented demand for his gear. So while the world's strongest adventurers prepare for the slaughter, his team will be gathering every rare material they can find to supply the coming war. He isn't with chilling confidence in this new strategy, Suma leads his companions deep into the treacherous lower layers to begin their harvest. Their search takes them to a set of overgrown ruins, where Suma relies on his sister's unique senses to find their target. But the rare item they seek, the legendary golden crystal skull, proves to be incredibly elusive. This single crafting material is so valuable it could fund their entire operation, easily worth over 3 million gold. After an exhaustive search, Suma finally calls for a quick break, believing they've earned a moment of rest. But in that very instant, his senses scream with danger as a glowing projectile materializes, aimed directly for his life. Before anyone can react, the entire area is engulfed by a storm of explosions from a perfectly coordinated and deadly ambush. As the dust from the explosion settles, a figure lands heavily in the distance. Suma stares in disbelief, realizing the nature of the attack was far too familiar. A chilling, maniacal laugh echoes through the ruins as dark feathers scatter in the air. From the shadows emerges the very same bird-like predator he had defeated once before. The monster mockingly thanks Suma for his newfound fame, which made him incredibly easy to track down. It swears that this time there will be no escape as it draws its bow for the killing blow. A single, glowing arrow streaks through the air, aimed directly at the crafter's heart. But in a terrifying display of power, the projectile suddenly multiplies into an inescapable volley of death. Unfazed by the incoming barrage, Suma simply calls his foe persistent as a crafting cube materializes in his hand. In an instant, he forges a complex, spinning shield, ready to nullify the entire attack. The whirlwind buckler effortlessly deflects the entire volley, leaving the attacker in utter disbelief. Its cloaked master mocks Suma's resolve, revealing it is no longer the simple wizard Ignis it once was. Suma remains completely unfazed as his old enemy begins to shed its disguise, ready to unleash its true power. In a burst of dark energy, the foe transforms into a terrifying high-rank spirit monster, Ignis Fatuus. It screams of past humiliation, vowing that its revenge will finally be complete as Suma's allies watch in horror. But suddenly, its own bird familiar bizarrely mocks its dramatic new name, confusing the powerful spirit. Enraged by the disrespect, Ignis Fatuus instantly blasts its own companion away with a surge of purple magic. The monster declares it is nothing like its former self, having sacrificed its very humanity for this terrifying new magic. 4 massive magic circles materialize in the air as it begins a high-level spirit-summoning ritual. With a sadistic grin, Ignis Fatuus questions if the level 999 crafter can possibly handle the high elemental spirits it's about to unleash. 4 powerful elemental spirits of fire, wind, water, and earth are unleashed upon him, as Ignis Fatuus proudly names its summons: Salamander, Sylphid, Undine, and the Gnomes. But Suma remains completely unfazed, instantly activating his high-level crafting ability. In a flash, he materializes 4 perfect elemental shields designed to counter each specific spirit. The powerful elemental assault crashes harmlessly against his perfectly prepared defenses. The spirits are completely nullified, their overwhelming power rendered absolutely useless. Ignis Fatuus grins maniacally, impressed that Suma could counter the 4 major elements simultaneously. But the monster reveals this was just a warm-up, unleashing 8 more magic circles for a second, deadlier wave. He summons 4 new, higher-tier spirits, including the terrifying Aurora, Electra, and the dreaded Lampus. Sheikah watches in pure horror, recognizing the ghost-like Lampus from the very incident that nearly claimed her life. Suma's eyes narrow as he finally understands the truth behind the attack, a grim realization dawning on him. He immediately counters the legion of spirits, his crafted weapon a blur of motion against their overwhelming magic. With pure fury, he declares that he now knows they were the ones who sent the Lampus to kill his sister. Looking down on the monsters, he promises to cut them down first before even bothering to learn their story. Suma then unleashes his ultimate technique, Fatal Vortex, a move so deadly that survival is not guaranteed. The once cocky monsters are thrown into a complete panic, their confidence shattered as one tries to flee for its life. But Suma doesn't even bother to chase, instead calmly ordering his loyal servant Eve to handle the runaway. Eve steps forward without hesitation, her hand crackling with an immense golden energy. In an instant, her arm transforms into a massive custom lightning cannon, revealing a level of technology far beyond this world. A targeting system immediately locks onto the distant enemy, as she coldly confirms the target has been acquired. Eve takes aim with her integrated arm cannon, her expression cold and merciless as Suma glances back, silently acknowledging the overwhelming power about to be unleashed. A colossal beam of golden energy descends from the heavens, locking onto the fleeing bird monster with absolute certainty. Meanwhile, the skeletal mage Ignis can only watch in sheer terror as Suma's own attack closes in on him. The bird creature is completely engulfed by the blast, its escape route cut off by a wall of pure destructive force. Both monsters are then trapped together in the blinding, chaotic vortex, their screams of agony echoing as their bodies are torn apart. The battlefield is wiped clean in a massive explosion, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust and silence in its wake. But to Suma's complete shock, he realizes that somehow, against all odds, both of his high-level targets are still alive. Lying broken and twitching on the ground, the 2 once mighty foes are now completely at his mercy. He immediately turns to his sister Sheikah, demanding an explanation for this impossible outcome. He needs to know just how they managed to survive a guaranteed kill shot from a level 999 player. Sheikah desperately cries out for him to wait as a dark energy barrier shatters before them. But from the shadows, a hidden observer mockingly admits he didn't expect such a one-sided slaughter. Suma's eyes widen in utter disbelief as he recognizes the man who just appeared. A smug grin spreads across the face of the infamous player-killer, Diablo. The killer casually reveals himself, wondering aloud how his true identity was exposed so quickly. He even praises Suma, acknowledging the veteran crafter's reputation from their time in the game. Suma recalls the chilling rumors of a serial killer who brought his murderous habits into the real world. Diablo smirks, revealing he knew Suma was hiding out in the lower levels all along. But Suma is already analyzing his foe, discovering his terrifying class is the Grim Reaper. The world around Diablo glitches as the system confirms his identity and immense power. Even Sheikah's advanced analysis hits a wall against the new foe. But Suma knows assassins are masters of concealment. He furiously confronts Diablo, demanding to know if he orchestrated the monster attack. The killer smirks, claiming he merely gave them power and that their decision to kill was their own. At first, he only wanted to watch for his own amusement, but seeing Suma fight has changed his mind. Suma recalls standing ready with his loyal companions, knowing a fight was inevitable. Now, Diablo's eyes burn with a chilling madness as he declares his desire to kill Suma with his own 2 hands. Before the battle can begin, Suma raises one final, crucial question. He asks if it was Diablo who twisted his past enemies into the grotesque monsters they became. Wielding a corrupted, glitching scythe, Diablo confirms it, taunting that only victory will reveal the whole truth. Suma's resolve hardens into steel as his legendary servant Eve powers up beside him, ready to unleash her absolute might. The killer, Diablo, easily identifies the legendary lightning attack that just missed him, and he even smirks, claiming he knows its charge time, and tells down to the very last second. But as his eyes narrow with pure killing intent, Suma's voice cuts through the air with a biting taunt, mocking the legendary scythe and questioning if the Grim Reaper has even truly mastered his own weapon. Suma can only grit his teeth, realizing his provocation has just awakened a true monster. With a chilling smile, Diablo declares it's his turn and summons a storm of dark energy orbs that blot out the sky. He swings his scythe, unleashing a wave of terrifying, corrupted power that rips through the battlefield. The very air seems to tear apart as the dark energy surges forward with immense pressure. From a safe distance, Sheikah can only watch in absolute terror, sensing an attack on a completely different level. Suddenly, the ground erupts as Diablo's ultimate skill, Crescent Execution, rains down with seemingly unstoppable force. Just as the apocalyptic attack is about to hit, a lone figure raises a weapon, summoning a holy barrier called the Staff of Sanctuary. From behind the shield, Suma protects his terrified sister Sheikah, who can't believe they were just saved from certain death. But the assault isn't over as Diablo's corrupted scythe crashes down, met head-on by Suma's newly crafted holy weapon in a shower of sparks. In that moment, Suma's eyes burn with pure rage as he realizes the Grim Reaper wasn't aiming for him, but for the helpless fairy on his shoulder. Diablo simply smirks, mockingly stating that taking out the weakest link, the scout, is just standard battlefield tactics. As the two powerhouses lock weapons, it's revealed that Eve, Suma's loyal servant, was also caught in the initial blast. But the legendary raid boss is far from defeated, instantly recovering to intercept another lethal swing from Diablo's scythe. Unfazed, the Grim Reaper pushes forward with a cruel smile, putting all of his immense power into the attack. Eve grits her teeth, her android body straining as she tanks the full, bone-shattering force of the blow head-on. Watching the exchange, Suma finally understands his enemy's dirty trick. The massive area of effect spell was just a smokescreen for a devastating surprise attack. Suma realizes they are locked in a perfect stalemate, with every move he makes being instantly countered. But Diablo smirks, declaring it's time to break this balance as he summons a flock of sinister crows. Suma's eyes then lock onto a strange dagger, a weapon that by all logic shouldn't even exist in this world. Suddenly, one of the crows is impaled by a mysterious, glowing object, catching Suma completely off guard. The Grim Reaper reveals his true plan, as his summoned familiars begin to twist and merge with dark energy. In a horrifying display of power, the crows fuse together, transforming into a massive, monstrous griffin. Suma immediately retaliates, his fist glowing with immense power as he smashes it directly into the beast's face. But in that moment, he recognizes the cursed item responsible for the transformation. It's the same dagger that turned Sheikah into a monster. The memory of the ominous, glowing blade flashes through his mind, the source of all his suffering. And as if that shock wasn't enough, Diablo summons an even larger, more terrifying creature to dominate the battlefield. Suma is blown away by the sheer force of the new monster's arrival, completely caught off guard. He grits his teeth in frustration, realizing his enemies are coming at him one after another, without end. Suddenly, a mysterious glowing dagger plunges into the earth, radiating a powerful and unknown aura. The Grim Reaper coolly explains that with their skills being equal, victory will be decided by who holds an unknown trump card. But as he smugly issues his challenge, Suma's loyal servant Eve makes a dramatic entrance onto the battlefield. She immediately launches a devastating kick at the veteran adventurer, their high-speed exchange shocking everyone present. Sheikah screams out Eve's name in terror as Suma can only watch, his own weapon now pulsing with a dark, corrupting energy. The veteran adventurer warns her to fall back, but Eve flatly refuses, her arm already transforming into a massive cannon. She calmly states that her top priority is her master's survival, a promise she made to his little sister. This unwavering resolve becomes a cause worthy of fighting the Grim Reaper, giving Sheikah a desperate glimmer of hope. Diablo mockingly calls their story touching, but Eve stares back with unshakable resolve. Without a word, she fires a concentrated blast of pure energy directly from her arm cannon. The veteran adventurer barely blocks the shot, their weapons colliding with immense force. This desperate struggle is a reflection of Suma's grim determination and Sheikah's terrified hope. The old warrior smirks, believing he anticipated her every move. But his confidence shatters, realizing his strike that should have disabled her power system had absolutely no effect. Eve then reveals a shocking truth: she is an amnesiac raid boss, a being beyond his comprehension. She declares herself the final trump card for both her master and his little sister. The veteran adventurer can only watch in horror as a storm of golden lightning begins to erupt around her. Screaming that he's too slow, she unleashes a forced overload, a devastating lightning culverin attack. Eve's ultimate attack slams into the veteran warrior, sending him flying in a blinding explosion of power. But the cost was too high, as she collapses, her body sparking uncontrollably, while a terrified Sheikah cries out her name. Watching from the sidelines, Suma can only curse her recklessness, realizing the situation has just gotten far more complicated. With a grim expression, he prepares a strange crafted item, knowing he has no choice but to intervene personally. However, a shadowy figure still stands in the distance, a foe so strong that even Suma admits he's been pushed to his limit. The wounded warrior, clutching a glowing crystal, whispers that he has no other option but to unleash his true form. Suddenly, a monstrous pillar of demonic blue energy erupts from his body, tearing the very air apart. The energy coalesces around him, twisting his flesh and armor into a horrifying new shape. He emerges completely transformed into a winged demon, reveling in the feeling of a true monster's body. But Suma simply smirks, revealing he knows this man's true identity, taunting that the name Diablo suits him far better than Grim Reaper. Diablo smirks, his new demonic form radiating a terrifying aura of pure, malevolent power. Suma's mind races, recalling how every past transformation created a monster that existed within the game's established rules. But this winged demon is something else entirely, a creature he's never seen, an entity that shouldn't exist. As the abomination rockets into the sky, Suma can only stare in disbelief at an enemy that defies all logic. The newly born demon lord reveals his full form, looking down upon the world as if it were his to conquer. In a desperate gambit, a command rings out for Hayato to unleash his ultimate monster summoning ability. Without hesitation, the birdfolk warrior unleashes his signature move, screaming beast call to summon an army from below. A massive pack of monsters surges forward, yet they seem utterly insignificant before the lone figure floating above. But with a bored expression, Diablo unleashes a devastating barrage of demonic energy spears from the heavens. The entire summoned army is instantly annihilated, proving in a flash just how hopeless this one-sided fight has truly become. Suma's eyes widen in sheer terror as his old rival makes his move. Before him stands a colossal, multi-eyed demonic beast, summoned by the winged Diablo who hovers menacingly above. Diablo watches from the sky as his monstrous creation lunges forward with blinding speed. Suma is instantly blown back by the sheer force, with no time to even think. He barely evades a devastating claw swipe that tears through the ground where he stood. But with a flash of light, the level 999 crafter instantly materializes an ice wall staff. He slams it down, erecting a massive crystalline barrier to intercept the beast's charge. The demonic monster crashes harmlessly against the impenetrable wall of ice, completely halted in its tracks. Wasting no time, Suma crafts his next weapon, a shimmering blade known as the Willow Edge. He then unleashes a storm of sweeping area of effect attacks, vowing to annihilate anything that gets past his defense. Suma realizes he can't stop moving for an instant, desperately evading the relentless onslaught while planning his next move. But suddenly, a dreadful feeling makes him look towards the sky in shock. High above, his old rival Diablo has manifested a colossal magic circle, crackling with pure annihilation. The demonic player killer prepares to unleash his ultimate skill, a world-ending attack known as Eclipse Judgment. In a desperate gamble, Suma pushes his ice wall staff to its absolute limit, deploying a maximum output barrier. He grits his teeth, pouring every last drop of his energy into the fragile defense. But the heavenly judgment is absolute, crashing down and shattering his impenetrable ice wall like glass. The resulting shockwave sends Suma flying, completely helpless against the overwhelming power. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the legendary raid boss Eve lies broken and unresponsive on the ground. Beside her, a terrified Sheikah cries out for her friend to wake up, her small voice lost in the chaos. Watching from afar, Sheikah realizes with dawning horror that her brother Suma is about to be killed. But deep within the fallen raid boss's core, a single spark of energy reignites her dormant systems. Sheikah's desperate cries act as a trigger, sending a powerful jolt through the android's body. A forgotten memory flashes through her mind, a sorrowful queen from an ancient past shedding a single, silent tear. Sheikah screams Eve's name as her internal circuits overload with an impossible amount of power. On the ground, Eve's consciousness finally returns, her pride refusing to accept such a pathetic defeat. Sheikah frantically tries to explain the dire threat, but the newly awakened Eve only responds with confusion. Then, in a shocking turn, she rises and formally addresses the tiny fairy as "My Lady," leaving Sheikah completely stunned. Realizing her original memories are returning, Sheikah watches as a golden light emanates from Eve's hand. A system alert confirms the impossible. Despite critical errors, a forced override is restoring her frozen past. Ignoring a 70% self-destruction warning, Eve's system overrides all safeties to reconstruct her ultimate weapon form. As her consciousness reboots, her highest priority directive finally comes into focus. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, a gargantuan purple beast summoned by Diablo dominates the landscape with its terrifying roar. The overwhelming assault leaves Suma completely defeated, and as he collapses, the demonic player killer descends to deliver the final blow. Diablo lands before his helpless rival, his victory all but guaranteed. With a cruel and determined gaze, he moves in to finally end their long-standing conflict. But in a flash of light, his attack is intercepted by Eve, who has reappeared in legendary armor wielding a colossal blade. The impact of their weapons meeting unleashes a blinding explosion of raw power that shakes the very ground. With her true strength and memories unlocked, the former raid boss effortlessly parries the attack, completely reversing the one-sided battle. Suma can only watch in shock, realizing the true, unimaginable power of the android servant he awakened. Eve reveals that while her memories haven't fully returned, unfamiliar scenes are flooding her circuits, as her core programming flickers, torn between a forgotten young miss and her current master. But Diablo recognizes her true, legendary identity with manic glee, naming her Grand Guignol Eve. He laughs, admitting her previous maid outfit completely fooled him, thrilled by this unexpected turn of events. Unfazed, Eve declares that her mission to protect her master is absolute, even if it means her own destruction. The demonic player killer simply smirks, warning her that her entire design is based on raw physical power alone. As a massive magic circle erupts, Diablo reveals her one critical weakness. Her divine sword has no defense against magic. Her hand tightens on her blade as the overwhelming spell prepares to launch. Meanwhile, the injured Suma urges her to focus on the fight, worried that their one surprise attack wasn't enough to finish him. Eve reassures him they'll be fine, but her eyes suddenly widen in shock as a new, unseen power enters the battlefield. Suma, though injured, looks on with complete faith, telling Eve to trust him. Eve responds with unwavering loyalty, her systems now fully online as she prepares to engage. But the new threat is revealed to be the spirit monster Ignis Fatuus, who conjures a devastatingly powerful dark magic spell. The massive vortex of demonic energy barrels towards them, a seemingly unstoppable force of pure destruction. Yet, in a flash of brilliant light, Eve meets the attack head-on, her sword defying all expectations. Diablo watches in absolute disbelief, his jaw agape as his perfect trap is shattered by an impossible feat. Golden energy crackles around Eve's blade as she channels a power that was never supposed to exist. With a single, decisive slash, she cleaves not just the spell, but the very magic circle fueling it in two. The fight is over in an instant, a completely one-sided counterattack that tears through Ignis Fatuus's defenses. The once mighty spirit monster collapses to the ground, utterly defeated and laughing at his own pathetic loss. From the sidelines, Diablo struggles to comprehend what just happened, realizing it wasn't just magic, but a feat of crafting. Eve's victory was absolute, her blade specially forged with light attribute materials to perfectly counter the dark spell. Even Diablo is stunned by the sheer, abnormal power output, a level of force that should be impossible. As the battle ends, Suma notices the defeated spirit monster's body is beginning to fade into nothingness. Ignis Fatuus calmly explains that as a monster, death means he will simply disappear from the world forever. But Suma refuses to let him go, grabbing the fading creature with a look of pure desperation. He furiously demands answers, questioning if Ignis was the one who cursed his sister Sheikah into a monster. A flicker of recognition crosses the dying monster's eyes as he hears the familiar name. He vaguely recalls a dagger processed from a thorn but claims to have no memory of the curse's true origin. In his final moments, he reveals he never knew a cure was possible, let alone with something like a philosopher's stone. With his enemy fading, Suma furiously demands to know if he's the one responsible for the curse. But the spirit monster offers only a cryptic warning as his form dissolves into nothingness. He vanishes completely, leaving behind a single clue as system messages remind Suma he's still tens of millions short of his goal. Back on the surface, he reports the incident to the authorities, who doubt the incredible story of what transpired in the depths. Yet with no time to waste, a massive public announcement is made to buy 2 legendary materials at any cost. Suma stuns the entire market, instantly acquiring both rare items for an astronomical 50 million gold. With 2 of the 3 components for the Philosopher's Stone secured, his impossible quest is suddenly closer than ever. Now, only one ingredient remains: the legendary elixir of Mercurius, the single most expensive item in the region. As he reflects on being so close to his goal, a familiar voice suddenly calls out his name through the crowd. His old acquaintance Ban approaches with a serious look, insisting they need to discuss an urgent matter. Back at their workshop, Suma offers his full support to the recovering Eve. Inside, the tiny Sheikah fusses over the bandaged automaton, who calmly insists her self-repair functions are normal. When offered food, Eve's logical request for a simple energy bottle leaves Sheikah momentarily stunned. But as she processes their interaction, a strange flicker appears deep within her consciousness. Suddenly, a glitched and distorted memory fragment of a forgotten past flashes through her mind. While drinking her energy supply, Eve confirms her core programming is intact but admits a piece of memory is causing issues. The source appears to be a corrupted file deep within her damaged memory core. She calmly explains it's likely an experience from before Suma awakened her, a past she barely remembers. But the former raid boss makes a chilling confession. If the corruption worsens, she cannot guarantee she will remain herself. Sheikah immediately cuts her off, insisting that right now, her only duty is to rest and heal. Sheikah apologizes to the recovering Eve, wondering if this is how she cares for their master too. But the innocent question leaves the tiny fairy completely flustered. She clarifies that Suma is the one who always takes care of her, a story Eve patiently prepares to endure. Her rambling is cut short when Suma suddenly returns, catching her completely off guard. He's not alone, as the barbarian Ban arrives with an important report from his mission. But before any business can be discussed, the warrior declares he's starving after his long journey. He hands over 2 rare ingredients, cockatrice meat and a powerful herb, for a quick meal. Suma's legendary crafting ability activates, instantly condensing the materials into a glowing red cube. A moment later, a perfectly grilled cockatrice materializes, cooked to absolute perfection. The impossible feat leaves even the legendary raid boss stunned, questioning the very limits of a crafter's power. Eve asks about Suma's cooking, but Sheikah's cheerful memories are cut short by a sudden sense of dread from the raid boss. Meanwhile, Ban takes a massive bite of the perfectly cooked meal before getting straight to the point. He tells Suma he has both good news and bad news from his recent mission. The good news is that they successfully repelled a monstrous elder dragon, securing a mountain of rare items for everyone involved. This has led to a colossal order for Suma's workshop, potentially reaching 10 million gold, leaving Sheikah completely stunned. But as Ban takes a final bite, his demeanor shifts from celebratory to grim. He reveals the truth behind the order. It's a reward from a client whose partner was murdered by the player, killer, Diablo. The celebratory mood vanishes as Sheikah and the legendary raid boss Eve listen to the dark history behind this new opportunity. Suma's expression hardens, his piercing red eyes filled with a heavy resolve. He accepts this new reality, realizing his decision to confront that demon head-on had consequences far beyond his own battle. Ban grits his teeth, his expression hardening as he prepares to deliver the final, grim part of his report. And with a grim flourish, he dramatically announces the bad news Suma has been waiting for. Another player has been transformed into a monster, but this time it happened on the surface, right under their noses. Hearing this, Suma's resolve hardens as a terrible truth finally clicks into place. Diablo's words were true all along. The mysterious owner of the thorn, who cursed Sheikah, is still active and spreading their influence. But when Suma asks for a name, Ban admits that even his powerful analysis skill came up with absolutely nothing. Sheikah looks on in despair as Ban declares that if Suma can't identify this enemy, then no one can. The barbarian throws his hands up in frustration, screaming that it's a complete checkmate, though Suma tells him not to give up so easily. Even the legendary raid boss Eve can only watch as they confirm the cursed jewel's name is completely bugged, leaving them with 0 clues. Suddenly, a chilling vision strikes Suma, a skeletal hand reaching for the cursed dagger, a hint to its true, horrifying origin. A terrifying vision floods Eve's mind, a dark citadel ruled by a shadowy figure, commanding a legion of dragons. The memory flashes to a powerful demonic entity, overwhelming a younger, terrified version of Eve herself. Back in the present, the bandaged raid boss suddenly jolts awake as her system overloads from the fragmented data. Suma and Sheikah rush to her side in a panic as she convulses from the sheer force of the incoming memories. But through the pain, Eve's eyes snap open with newfound clarity, whispering that she finally understands everything. She then reveals the name of their true enemy, a being at the root of all their suffering, the demon lord Oz. Hearing this, their companion Clara is utterly bewildered, questioning what a demon lord even is. Sheikah confirms that even Suma, with his vast knowledge, had never heard this name before, deepening the impossible mystery. The weight of this revelation crashes down on Shika. The monster that cursed her is an entity beyond even her brother's comprehension. Desperate for any clue, the group turns to Clara, asking if she knows anything about this impossible foe. Despite their hopes, another one of their automatons confirms that the name Demon Lord Oz is completely absent from her memory banks. Eve grimly concludes this was expected, as a standard model wouldn't possess such a forbidden and dangerous memory. Just then, another ally reveals she holds a mysterious clue, but Clara admits she's completely useless in identifying it. Frustrated by the dead end, Shika complains their only option is to blindly search the labyrinth for a presence that matches the jewel's strange energy. Her sudden declaration about a presence catches everyone completely off guard, leaving them stunned and confused. The others question this feeling, sensing only normal magic from the orb and noting even Suma hadn't detected anything special. But Shika doubles down, explaining that a cursed dagger, the jewel, and even the demonic player killer Diablo all radiated the exact same ominous energy. A terrifying realization dawns on her as she wonders if her own cursed body might be resonating with these artifacts linked to the Demon Lord himself. Suddenly filled with hope, she understands her unique condition could be the one thing capable of tracking down their impossible foe and finally helping her brother. While Clara doesn't fully grasp the complex theory, she's happy for her friend, and then asks the crucial question of where Suma has gone. It's revealed that Suma has descended to the lower levels on a special request from the governing committee. Meanwhile, he's escorted up a desolate path while an official reconfirms the details of the mission. His task is to interrogate a victim of the mysterious monster transformation phenomenon, a man named Jorg the Dragoon. But the target has gone rogue, refusing all contact, and the committee believes only Suma can persuade him. Suddenly, Suma grabs the official's arm, sensing an imminent danger that no one else can perceive. In the distance, a massive explosion erupts, confirming his terrifying instincts were correct. A lone figure stands atop a cliff, desperately screaming for them to stay away. The man has been twisted into a monstrous beast, begging them to leave while he can still control himself. Suma instantly understands the man's terror. He believes that if his body is a monster, his mind will inevitably follow. Unfazed, the level 999 crafter prepares a complex spell, pulling out materials linked to the Grim Reaper himself. The transformed Dragoon panics and unleashes a powerful blast, screaming for them to stay away. But Suma simply stands his ground, condensing a terrifying amount of dark energy into a small sphere. The monster can only watch in stunned silence as its attack is completely nullified. A blinding explosion erupts where Suma stands, seemingly obliterating the entire area. When the dust settles, the beast is on the ground, defeated, as Suma reveals the name of his legendary weapon. He has crafted Falx Noctis, a massive scythe imbued with the cosmic power of a Grim Reaper. Suma calmly tells the beast that he gave him a warning, his power level now terrifyingly clear. The monster flinches back in pure terror as the level 999 crafter approaches without hesitation. But instead of a killing blow, Suma just bonks him on the head, telling him to calm down. He then explains that a monster's body doesn't mean a monster's heart, finally getting through to the terrified man. After subduing the monster, a knight praises Suma's splendid work and reassuring presence. Immediately, a man from the self-governing committee tries to recruit the crafter to help fight the monster transformations. But Suma bluntly refuses, stating he has no time for unpaid volunteer work when he needs to earn millions. The knight is left completely speechless by his brutally honest rejection. The recruiter quickly changes his approach, offering a formal crafting request instead of volunteer work. Suma's entire demeanor shifts when he hears the client's legendary name, Collector Ishtar. A glitching hologram of a mysterious blonde woman suddenly appears before them. Then, a massive, intimidating man reveals himself, admitting he's been having Suma followed this whole time. The request is finally revealed. Craft an item capable of defeating the Demon Lord Os. And for this impossible task, an unbelievable reward is offered, 30 million gold, capturing Suma's undivided attention. Suma confirms he's already been investigating the lower levels and the Demon Lord, while Diablo notes his rival's typical thoroughness. The mysterious woman seems impatient, declaring she wants to end the current chaos in the labyrinth immediately. She then reveals the legendary Elixir of Mercurius, a key item with a staggering price tag of 50 million gold. With Suma's 30 million reward, she points out he'd only need 20 million more to afford it, proving just how much she's researched him. She explains her faction, the committee, desires stability for the world above ground. Personally, she desires the stability of the labyrinth's supply network, and she correctly deduces that Suma simply desires sufficient compensation for his efforts. With their motivations aligned, Suma declares that this is purely a business transaction. He finally accepts the impossible quest, but with one condition. The 30 million reward must be paid in full upon completion. The mysterious client smirks, her plan having successfully roped in the world's strongest crafter. Suma begins his new quest by recruiting a timid monster named Georg to be their guide, who reveals their destination is Rin Island, a mythical land of floating platforms deep within the lower levels. Georg leads him towards a strange ancient warp gate shimmering with immense power, revealing it's a secret passage his old party discovered, one unknown even to Suma. He then explains his last memory was of his entire party trying to use the gate to reach the labyrinth's deepest, uncharted territory, and Suma realizes this could be the path to the Demon Lord Osa's main body, but Georg warns him not to get close. Suddenly, a horrifying, otherworldly creature begins to ooze out from the portal's energy, as a shocking memory flashes, showing a grim reaper striking the beast with a massive purple scythe. The vision reveals the true, colossal scale of the monster, which completely dwarfs its lone attacker. Back in the present, Suma's own power begins to manifest as he prepares to face the threat Georg conveniently forgot to mention. As the abyssal creature oozes from the portal, its corrupting energy fills the ancient chamber. Suma stares it down, realizing this is a level of danger he could never expose his sister to. Just a few days ago, Shika was in utter shock when he told her she was being left behind. She desperately argued that her unique senses could help track the Demon Lord, but Suma firmly refused. He could only offer vague excuses, unable to tell her the horrifying truth he was trying to protect her from. In his mind, he saw visions of the unknown horrors lurking in the labyrinth's deepest level. He knew that if she understood the true risk, she would try to stop the entire mission. Throughout the entire argument, the legendary raid boss Eve watched on in complete silence. Now, the expedition has begun, leading them to a mysterious floating island cut off from the world. A massive army of adventurers has gathered, all of them looking to a lone figure, standing before the path into darkness. From a hidden vantage point, the legendary raid boss Eve watches Suma, admitting to herself that she's still worried about him. But she's not the only one, as the tiny fairy Shika peeks out from her collar, unable to bear the suspense. Their eyes scan the area, landing on the unbelievable number of high-level adventurers who answered the call for this desperate mission. For a fleeting moment, Eve feels a wave of relief, thinking that with this much power gathered, maybe there was nothing to fear after all. Suddenly, the sharp crackle of a megaphone shatters the silence, drawing the attention of every last soldier on the field. In a flashback, Suma reveals the mission's true objective: to find the root cause of the monster transformation and secure a cure. He had prepared specialized resistance items, but soberly warned that they were only a minimum guarantee against the unknown horrors ahead. More importantly, he presented a set of marking orbs, stating that just tracking the enemy's location would be a monumental victory. Back in the present, it is Suma himself who holds the megaphone, his voice about to command an entire army. With a look of absolute resolve, he begins to issue the final orders for an expedition into the heart of darkness. Far from the battlefield's tension, the little fairy Shika playfully peeks over a barrier, but their true target is revealed a writhing mass of eldritch horror, sealed by ancient magic. Suma's voice cracks through the megaphone, ordering the interception team to engage the monstrosity. The elite adventurers charge forward, their numbers looking utterly insignificant against the colossal beast. Suddenly, a shimmering blue portal tears open reality, pulling everyone towards its unstable core. A single hand clenches as the world dissolves into a storm of raw energy. Shika's playful expression twists into sheer panic as she's consumed by the light. Suma finds himself in a bizarre, glitching dimension, a broken world that shouldn't exist. As Shika frantically asks where everyone went, Eve calmly explains they were all just sent to different locations. She then reveals to a stunned Suma that this chaotic separation was an anticipated part of the mission. Shika realizes Suma was making secret preparations all along, steeling herself for what's to come, and inspired by his overwhelming power, she clenches her fist, vowing to do her part. Meanwhile, Suma and Eve navigate a desolate, glitching landscape of shattered crystals. Suddenly, a terrifying, tentacled monstrosity materializes from the distorted reality, blocking their path. The creature's horrifying form reminds Shika of a past enemy, making her question if this is Diablos or the Demon Lord's doing. Her gaze hardens with resolve as she prepares for the inevitable conflict. But then, she spots a lone, ominous church standing amidst the chaos and calls out to Eve. The loyal android immediately reports the suspicious structure to Suma, proposing a full investigation. Inside, the grand hall lies in silent ruin, its cracked floors hinting at a battle long past. Anticipating a trap, Suma confirms Eve's specialized weapon systems are fully restored and ready for deployment. Sheikah senses an evil presence identical to Diablo's, hoping to find a clue to his whereabouts. With her colossal weapon deployed, Eve coldly demands that whoever is hiding come out quietly. Suma echoes her command, staring down a broken pillar, knowing they're not alone in the ruined church. Suddenly, a shadowy figure with a familiar silhouette emerges from behind the crumbling stone. Suma's eyes widen in disbelief as he recognizes the impossible figures standing before him. It's the tyrant Hayato and the wizard Ignis, two powerful enemies he had already defeated long ago. Without hesitation, Suma summons his glowing crafting cube, ready to annihilate these resurrected threats. But the two former villains immediately throw themselves to the ground, desperately surrendering and claiming they were forced into this. Suma scoffs at their act, reminding them they attacked first, even as they cower before him and Eve. In a final, terrified plea, they scream that they don't want to be annihilated like Diablo was. Suma's senses scream as reality itself seems to crack around him, realizing the resurrected villains were just a distraction. Suddenly, Sheikah's panicked voice cuts through the chaos, warning him of an overwhelming presence descending from above. A colossal pillar of crystalline energy erupts in the sky, dwarfing everything below with its sheer power. Suma whirls around in shock, realizing not only did Sheikah follow him, but his loyal servant Eve was in on it too. Eve calmly states she couldn't deny the little sister's wish, but Suma knows this is no place for a child. But Sheikah interrupts, her eyes wide with terror as she senses a familiar, dreadful aura, the same one from the Dark Island. Even the legendary raid boss Eve can only watch with a grim expression as the dark presence begins to materialize. The air grows cold, as a name is finally put to the suffocating pressure, the one responsible for everything: Demon Lord Oz. Before him stands the winged Demon Lord in all its terrifying glory, an entity that should not exist in this world. With Sheikah's senses and Eve's own memories confirming it, there is no doubt the final boss has finally made his move. Even Suma's resurrected enemies stare in terror, recognizing the winged silhouette as the very monster that's been hunting them. But Suma, facing the same ultimate threat, refuses to run, seeing this as the perfect chance to gather critical information. In fact, this was all part of the plan, a desperate strategy formulated for this exact apocalyptic scenario. With a defiant roar, he raises a golden beacon, screaming for immediate reinforcements. A blinding pillar of pure energy instantly erupts from his position, stabbing straight into the heavens. The signal flares with overwhelming power, a desperate call for aid against an impossible enemy. It rockets from the old cathedral, a beacon of defiance now visible across the entire kingdom. Far away, his allies spot the emergency signal, instantly realizing Suma must be in grave danger. Ban stares in disbelief at the signal's unique color, a code reserved for only the most dire of threats. The horrifying truth spreads like wildfire. He hasn't just found a strong monster, he's encountered the Demon Lord himself. A shadowy claw descends, the very presence of the Demon Lord Oz, distorting reality itself. But before Suma can react, demonic hands erupt from the ground, instantly trapping him in place. Hess caught and hoisted into the air, completely helpless against the monster's overwhelming strength. The immense pressure begins to crush him, as his weapon proves utterly useless against the demonic grip. With a sickening crack, his custom-crafted staff shatters like glass, leaving him defenseless. But just as all hope seems lost, a pillar of light descends from the heavens, answering his desperate call. The Demon Lord's killing blow is suddenly intercepted by a storm of deadly crystalline shards. Suma can only watch in disbelief as his unexpected savior makes a dramatic entrance. High above, a familiar figure unleashes an apocalyptic barrage, raining down hundreds of projectiles on the enemy. Eve lands before him, her expression grim as she declares that this fight is now hers alone. Eve admits that while she can't recall her past with the demonic entity known as Os, the very sight of his shadowy form stirs a dormant memory within her soul. A primal, uncontrollable rage suddenly erupts from the deepest part of her being, her eyes glowing with fury. Channeling this ancient hatred, she surges forward, her weapon system glowing with apocalyptic energy. Her devastating attack slams into the Demon Lord, who barely manages to raise a defensive barrier in time. Far below, the tyrant Hayato stares in horror at the massive explosion, recognizing the signature power of a legendary raid boss. Os is completely blown away by the golden blast, sent crashing down towards the earth like a fallen god. He desperately conjures a magical shield, but it's already starting to crack under the immense pressure. The demon's eyes widen in disbelief as he faces a level of power he never anticipated from his former foe. But Eve's cold, determined expression makes it clear this fight is just getting started. With her full combat potential unlocked, she pushes her assault, ready to end this once and for all. But as the dust settles, Osei rises, his demonic power surging with a sinister new purpose. He unleashes a torrent of dark energy, not at Eve, but straight towards the ground below. The blast completely engulfs two of Suma's defeated foes, who scream as their very forms are twisted by the foul magic. The spirit monster, Ignis, panics, realizing his mind is no longer his own as Osa's control takes over. From the smoke emerge Suma's past enemies, now fused into a single, nightmarish beast under the demon's command. Suma watches in horror, understanding that Oze has turned his defeated rivals into nothing more than puppets. But Eve, her eyes glowing with fury, roars that these resurrected pawns are merely in her way. She intercepts the fused monster's attack head-on, refusing to let it distract her from her true target. Suddenly, a massive scythe cleaves through the air as Suma's greatest rival, Diablo, makes a shocking appearance. Suma can only stare in disbelief as the man who nearly killed him descends from the heavens like a god of death. Suma realizes with dread that the enemy is completely ignoring the powerful Eve to target him directly. He instantly summons a wall shield from his crafting cubes, desperately trying to block the incoming tendrils. But the sheer force of the demonic assault is far greater than he anticipated. His shield shatters in a massive explosion as Sheikah cries out his name in terror. Thrown against the wall, Suma grits his teeth through the pain and orders her to get to safety. But she panics, explaining that while HP absorbs normal damage, this attack is something far more sinister. Status abnormalities are a different beast entirely, bypassing all defenses if a resistance check is failed. If the enemy's thorn attack counts as one of these effects, it's essentially a one-hit kill. A terrifying, glowing blade materializes, crackling with the energy of an instant death spell. Understanding he's been marked as the weakest link, Suma prepares a desperate gambit, unleashing his reverse craft ability. He shatters his own item, unleashing a torrent of crafting energy to buy himself a moment. But Suma quickly realizes his opponent isn't actually trying to kill him. This creature specifically targets those who have undergone monster transformation, completely ignoring the raid boss Eve. In fact, the spirit monster is blatantly holding back its power, refusing to summon more minions for a quick kill. Suma understands he's being hunted, baited into a trap for the instant death thorn, forcing him to summon his twin rampart shields. Suddenly, the resurrected wizard lunges forward with overwhelming speed and power. Suma is pushed onto the back foot, unable to find any opening for a counterattack as a killing blow is prepared. He desperately raises his shields against the glowing, ethereal blade aimed right at his chest. But his ultimate defense shatters like glass under the relentless assault. In that moment of shock, he realizes the attack was just a feint to land a deadly marking ball. As Suma is cornered, his little sister Sheikah screams for him to run, rushing towards the danger. But the spirit monster ignores the level 999 crafter, locking its sights on a new target. It unleashes a devastating beam of corrupting energy directly at the defenseless fairy. Sheikah is engulfed in the blast, her body glitching as she screams in agony. The monsterification curse accelerates, twisting her form into a demonic creature begging for help. In the chaos, the raid boss Eve's eyes narrow with cold fury. She instantly leaps forward to protect her little sister from the unspeakable horror. Suma can only watch, screaming her name as his worst nightmare unfolds before his eyes. His mind shatters, shock and terror freezing him in place. But in that moment of despair, a terrifying, murderous rage begins to boil over. Suma's eyes burn with rage as he channels his power for a desperate counterattack. However, the enemy simply turns its back, showing absolute contempt for the level 999 crafter. In the next instant, Suma collapses, screaming as an invisible power crushes his body. High above him, a new figure descends, the true demon Lord Os, the source of all his suffering. Enraged beyond words, the raid boss Eve screams a challenge at the ancient demon. The demon lord simply watches, its ethereal form radiating an aura of absolute death. With a roar, Eve clashes with Oz, their collision shaking the very foundations of the sanctuary. The resulting shockwave blasts outwards, leveling a nearby fortress with its sheer force. Their battle becomes a blur of light and fury, as Eve unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks. Pushing past her limits, she focuses all her power into a single, desperate, world-breaking strike. Eve's ultimate attack connects with Demon Lord Oz in a cataclysmic explosion. But the fallout isn't just physical, as Suma screams in agony, realizing the Demon Lord's curse is now infecting him too. Refusing to panic, he pulls out a special item he crafted for this exact contingency. He injects the cure, but a system notification reveals a terrifyingly low success rate of under 40%. All his careful preparations seem to crumble as he realizes just how little time he has left. With no other choice, Suma gambles everything on a dangerous maximum resistance agent, ignoring any potential side effects. The gamble pays off as his resistance check skyrockets, and successfully purges the curse from his system. Hess left panting and exhausted, the cure's raw power still surging through his arm. Suma confirms his theory. His unique resistances can fight off even a demon lord's power, but only if he acts fast enough. But just as he catches his breath, a new, horrifying presence makes him freeze in terror. The horrifying truth dawns on him. The curse will relentlessly attack his system until he becomes a monster himself. Fueled by his promise to Sheikah, he desperately fights back against the demonic power taking over his body. Suddenly, his little sister appears, clinging to his monstrous arm and calling his name, trying to reach the man within the beast. But his consciousness is fading fast, his mind fracturing as he struggles to even speak her name. In a blinding flash, a powerful purification item known as fairy dust powder erupts around him. Sheikah knows this is the only way, the ultimate countermeasure against a demon lord's status ailment. Her voice finally pierces the darkness, pulling his mind back from the brink of oblivion. With a tearful smile, she makes a heartbreaking confession, telling him how much she truly loved him. Then her eyes close as her tiny body begins to dissolve into countless particles of light. In her place, a mysterious crystalline object forms and falls, the last remnant of the sister who gave everything to save him. Suma stands alone, clutching the crystal that is all that remains of his sister. But in an instant, his grief twists into pure, unbridled rage. He stares at the winged shard in his palm, her final, desperate gift, and a silent scream of anguish tears through him as the reality of his loss finally hits. Yet without a moment's hesitation, he plunges the crystal directly into his own heart. A system alert confirms the demon lord's curse has been completely neutralized by her sacrifice. With his mind cleared and his power surging back, he immediately begins a desperate analysis, frantically searching for any trace, any clue left behind that could possibly bring her back. But his focus is shattered as two resurrected foes, Ignis and Hayato, descend upon him, and he realizes they are nothing but puppets, manipulated by the true enemy behind this entire tragedy, Demon Lord Os. Suma realizes his resurrected foes aren't truly themselves, but are simply puppets under the Demon Lord's control. So with no time to hesitate, he instantly crafts a new item in a desperate gambit to sever their strings. He stands calmly between the two monstrous beasts, holding the key to their freedom or their destruction, as the monsters lunge forward with devastating force, aiming to tear him apart before he can act. But Suma effortlessly weaves between their claws, his movements too fast for the mindless puppets to track. He raises the glowing blue key, a tool not of destruction, but of liberation, and a wave of energy washes over his former enemies, interrupting the dark magic that binds them. Ignis and Hayato cry out in confusion as the Demon Lord's influence shatters within their minds. Suddenly, a memory flashes through Suma's mind. His rival Diablo once did the exact same thing, manipulating his own summoned beasts. His eyes burn with a new fire as he understands the true weakness. He can overwrite the enemy's command with his own power. Suma pours every ounce of his being into a desperate, glowing blue ritual. As a colossal sphere of energy erupts from him, engulfing the entire chamber in its light. When the power fades, a shadowy corruption is violently purged from his kneeling form, but the process leaves him gasping in agony. The cost of this power clearly immense. A single tear escapes his eye, a mixture of profound sorrow and desperate hope, for in his hand lies Sheikah, now a tiny fairy whose sacrifice has just saved his soul. He whispers his thanks, relieved the monsterification curse has finally been broken. Meanwhile, a far greater battle rages on as Eve clashes with the Demon Lord Os, tearing the very landscape apart. Os stands unfazed by her attack, his power and regeneration revealed to be even greater than Suma's ultimate rival, Diablo. Demon Lord Os's eye flashes with terrifying power as he prepares to end the fight. But Eve stands firm, locked in a desperate battle of attrition she knows she might not survive. The ancient demon calmly meets her gaze, his power feeling absolute and overwhelming. Suddenly, a colossal magic circle erupts from the ground, trapping them both in a deadly ritual. Eve realizes he's finally going all out, and steels herself, ready to sacrifice her own life to stop him. A cataclysmic blast of energy tears across the landscape, engulfing her in its raw destructive force. But a moment later she is left completely stunned, not by the attack, but by what she sees. Because from atop a cliff, a new force has somehow blocked the Demon Lord's ultimate spell. His resurrected foes and loyal allies have arrived just in time, combining their strength to turn the tide of a hopeless battle. The Demon Lord unleashes a torrent of dark energy, preparing for his ultimate move. His true monstrous form, a being of pure malevolent power, glares down at the heroes. He floods the entire battlefield with an overwhelming wave of demonic pressure, ready to annihilate them all. But instead of attacking, the ancient evil begins to mysteriously pull back its power. Eve watches in complete disbelief as the unstoppable monster actually begins to retreat from the fight. She realizes this isn't cowardice, but a cold, calculated withdrawal from a foe, far more intelligent than she could have imagined. Suddenly, a surge of energy racks her body, triggering a violent and painful memory from deep within her core systems. Fragments of her lost past come flooding back, revealing a forgotten, desperate battle against this very same demon. And in that memory, she sees the one outcome she never thought possible: her own complete and utter defeat.